Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to a time when life wasn't just different, it was downright bizarre, especially if you happen to be born into royalty. Imagine, if you will, the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows on tapestried walls, the heavy scent of herbs trying to mask less pleasant odors, and the hushed whispers of anxious courtiers. You're not just watching this unfold, you're living it. You're about to experience a childhood so utterly foreign to anything we know today that, honestly, you probably won't survive the first 5 years, let alone the entire peculiar journey of a medieval monarch. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first breath in this world isn't a private family moment, whispered over with quiet joy. Oh no, the moment you decide to grace the world with your royal presence. The birthing chamber transforms into a public spectacle, a veritable medieval reality show, though thankfully without the cameras. There are dozens, sometimes scores, of people crammed into the room. High-ranking nobles, church officials, esteemed ladies of the court, and even a few commoners chosen for their impeccable reputation. They are all here for one crucial reason: to witness your birth and attest to your legitimacy. You see, the stability of a kingdom, the very line of succession, hinges on the undeniable proof that you are, indeed, the true heir. No switcheroos, no changelings, no whispered doubts in the dark corners of the castle. Every contraction your mother endures, every push, every gasp, is observed. It's a bit like trying to give birth in the middle of a particularly intense board meeting, isn't it? Except, with more grunting and less PowerPoint. The air is thick with anticipation, and perhaps a little fear. High infant mortality rates are a grim reality of the age, and royal babies are no exception. Superstitions abound, too. A comet streaks across the sky during your birth, an omen of greatness, a particularly stubborn birth, perhaps a sign of future struggles. Astrologers would have charted the stars at the precise moment of your arrival, their intricate calculations supposedly foretelling your destiny. Whether you'd be a mighty warrior, a pious ruler, or, heaven forbid, a sickly, short-lived disappointment. The midwife, often a woman of great experience but limited formal medical training, is the true hero of this chaotic scene, guiding your mother through what is, for many, a perilous ordeal. Doctors, when they are present, might offer remedies like ground pearls or powdered unicorn horn, anything to lend an air of sophisticated, if utterly ineffective, intervention. The moment you emerge, tiny and squalling, you are immediately scrutinized. Is it a boy? The relief in the room is almost palpable if you are. A girl is welcomed, of course, but the preference for a male heir to continue the direct line is an unspoken, heavy truth. Your first few hours are a whirlwind of rituals. You're swiftly baptized, often in a grand ceremony, receiving a name carefully chosen for its historical significance or its connection to powerful saints. Then comes the swaddling, a practice where you are tightly bound in linen strips, head to toe, like a tiny royal mummy. The belief is that this will ensure your limbs grow straight and strong, though it mostly just restricts your movement to an impressive degree. Imagine being trussed up like a holiday turkey from day one. You can't even flail your arms in protest, which is probably a good thing, given the precariousness of medieval infant care. Almost immediately, you are separated from your mother. This isn't out of cruelty, but necessity and custom. Royal mothers rarely, if ever, breastfed their own children. That duty falls to a wet nurse, a healthy, robust woman, often from a lower social standing but chosen for her good character and abundant milk. She becomes your primary caregiver, your source of nourishment and comfort. While your mother might visit, perhaps offer a gentle pat or a coo, the intimate bond forged through daily feeding and care simply isn't there. Your wet nurse is your first true connection to the world, a surrogate mother whose health and temperament are constantly monitored, as it's believed her qualities will pass to you through her milk. This arrangement, while practical, creates a profound emotional distance from your biological parents from the very beginning. It's a stark contrast to modern parenting, where attachment parenting is all the rage. Here, attachment to your birth mother is practically discouraged. As you grow from a swaddled infant into a wobbly toddler, your world remains surprisingly isolated, despite the bustling court around you. You're surrounded by attendants, nannies, and servants, but often few, if any, other children of your own age. Playtime isn't about muddy knees and scraped elbows. It's about learning the rigid etiquette of court, even at an incredibly young age. You're taught to bow, to curtsy, to address nobles with the proper titles, to sit still during long feasts, and to suppress any childish outbursts. Discipline is swift and often harsh. A small royal heir might not be physically beaten by their parents or even their tutors, but the concept of the whipping boy is very real. If you, the young prince, misbehave or fail to learn your lessons, a designated whipping boy, a commoner child of similar age, raised alongside you, would receive the physical punishment in your stead. The idea was that seeing your friend suffer would make you feel the pain and learn your lesson. Historians still argue whether this practice was truly effective in instilling discipline or merely fostered resentment and a rather twisted sense of vicarious suffering. It certainly sounds like a bizarre form of medieval aversion therapy, doesn't it? Oh, you didn't learn your Latin declensions, Your Highness? Well, young Thomas here is about to get a painful reminder of your academic shortcomings. Your formal education begins remarkably early, often before you've even mastered walking properly. For a young prince, it's a rigorous curriculum designed to prepare you for the immense burden of kingship. You'll learn Latin, the language of the church and diplomacy, and potentially French, the language of the Norman conquerors and much of European aristocracy. You'll study history, not for general knowledge, but to learn from the successes and failures of past rulers. Theology is paramount, as your rule is believed to be divinely ordained. You'll be instructed in law, administration, and the intricacies of court politics. For a princess, the education is equally rigorous but focused on different skills. Managing a household, courtly manners, possibly languages to facilitate a future marriage alliance, and, of course, deep religious instruction. You are not a child to be nurtured and allowed to explore. You are a future asset, a political chess piece being meticulously shaped for your predetermined role. Your days are structured, rigid, and filled with lessons. There's little time for spontaneous play or the kind of carefree exploration that defines modern childhood. Your toys are often practical, miniature versions of the tools of your future trade. Wooden swords and shields for a prince, dolls representing ladies of the court for a princess. Even your interactions are carefully managed. While you might form bonds with your personal attendants or your whipping boy, genuine friendships with equals are rare. Most people around you are either servants, tutors, or courtiers vying for influence, all of whom treat you with a deference that reinforces your unique, isolated position. You are constantly reminded of your status, the weight of your lineage, and the expectations that press down on your small shoulders. It's a childhood of privilege, yes, but also one of profound pressure and emotional detachment. You might have the finest silks and the richest foods, but the simple warmth of a parent's embrace or the freedom to just be a child is a luxury you rarely, if ever, experience. This early, intense training, coupled with the constant awareness of your destiny, shapes you not just into a ruler, but into a very specific kind of person, one molded by the peculiar customs and demands of medieval royalty. And so, you've survived the slightly unconventional start to your royal life, haven't you? You've navigated the whispers of your birth, the cold stone of your nursery, and the stern, unyielding gaze of your early tutors. You've learned to eat with a certain decorum, to hold yourself with an air of inherited authority, and to understand that your every action is observed, recorded, and judged. But just as you begin to grasp the weight of your title, a new, far more profound truth settles upon you, heavy as a royal cloak. Your future, your very personal future, is not yours to decide. Not now, not ever. You see, while you might dream of gallant knights or fair maidens, of whispered promises under a full moon, the reality of medieval royalty is far less romantic. Forget your storybook notions of love at first sight, or even love at any sight, really. For you, the concept of a soulmate is as alien as a flying machine. Your life, your very being, is a strategic asset, A piece on the grand chessboard of Europe, and your marriage? Oh, your marriage is the ultimate power play. It's a treaty, a land claim, a declaration of peace, or even a preemptive strike, all wrapped up in silk and solemn vows. You are not marrying a person. You are marrying a kingdom. The whispers begin early, even before you're fully aware of their meaning. You might be a mere toddler, still tripping over your own feet in the echoing halls, when your parents and their most trusted advisors start sifting through potential candidates. It's like an elaborate, high-stakes game of medieval Tinder, except instead of swiping left or right, they're poring over illuminated genealogies, scrutinizing dowry offers, and weighing the strategic advantages of one duchy over another. Ah, the Count of Flanders has a daughter of suitable age, with a healthy claim to valuable coastal lands. You might overhear. Or, the Duke of Brittany's son, though a bit sickly, could bring much-needed military support. It's all very transactional, isn't it? No personal preferences, no compatibility quizzes, just cold, hard geopolitical facts. This isn't just a quaint custom. It's a fundamental pillar of medieval statecraft. Consider, for instance, the sheer number of alliances forged through marriage during the 100 Years' War between England and France. Both sides constantly sought to shore up their positions, to gain allies, and to isolate their enemies, often through the exchange of royal brides and grooms. It was a diplomatic tool par excellence, sometimes even more effective than outright warfare, at least in theory. A mainstream historical fact you'll quickly learn is that royal marriages were the bedrock of dynastic politics, designed to solidify claims, merge territories, and prevent or end conflicts. You are not a child. You are a living, breathing treaty document. The negotiations themselves could drag on for years, sometimes decades. Envoys crisscrossed the continent, enduring perilous journeys through bandit-infested forests and over treacherous mountain passes, all to deliver messages and counteroffers, haggling over every last coin of a dowry or every acre of a disputed fiefdom. Your future spouse's family would offer a * dowry, a substantial sum of money, land, or goods that the bride brought to the marriage, essentially her contribution to the marital estate. Your family, in turn, would promise a * dower, a portion of your lands or income set aside for your future wife's support should you die before her. It was a complex financial dance, often involving vast sums that could make or break a kingdom's treasury. Imagine the stress of these accountants, trying to balance the books of an entire nation based on whether your future spouse's father would throw in an extra castle. And then there's the truly peculiar side of these negotiations: the physical requirements. While love was irrelevant, physical suitability was paramount. After all, your primary duty was to produce heirs, preferably healthy, legitimate ones. So, your prospective spouse's family might demand detailed descriptions of your appearance, your health, even the size and shape of your limbs. Sometimes, if the distance wasn't too prohibitive, a trusted envoy might even be sent to inspect you. Yes, you heard that right. An inspection. You're paraded before a stranger, who meticulously notes your height, your build, the color of your hair and eyes, any visible blemishes or deformities. They're looking for signs of disease, weakness, or anything that might hinder your ability to procreate. It's like being a prize horse at a market, except the stakes are far, far higher. Talk about an awkward first impression. So, you're the one who's going to secure our northern border. Let me just check your teeth. A quirky tidbit that often arises from these detailed negotiations is the inclusion of incredibly specific clauses within the marriage contracts. Beyond the dowry and dower, these documents might stipulate everything from the number of ladies-in-waiting your future bride could bring, to the exact type of jewels she would receive, to the religious practices she must observe. Some contracts even detailed clauses for what would happen if the marriage remained unconsummated after a certain period, or if no heirs were produced. It was all laid out in painstaking detail, leaving very little to chance, and even less to personal whim. Eventually, a match is made. The contracts are signed, sealed with impressive wax impressions, and exchanged. You are now officially betrothed. For your betrothed, it might mean a long, arduous journey across the continent. Imagine the scene. A young princess or prince, often still a child, setting out from their ancestral home, perhaps never to return. They travel with a massive retinue guards, ladies-in-waiting, chaplains, cooks, musicians, and countless servants, a veritable moving city, all designed to ensure their safety and maintain their status. The roads are rough, the inns are often squalid, and the weather is unpredictable. Bandits lurk in the woods, rivers swell with rain, and diseases spread like wildfire. It's less a romantic journey to meet your beloved and more a state visit with extreme logistical challenges and a constant underlying threat of ambush or illness. And then, finally, the meeting. Often, this first encounter happens just before the wedding ceremony itself. You might exchange polite, stilted pleasantries, perhaps a formal bow or a curtsy. There's no time for getting to know one another, no casual conversation to discover shared interests. The pressure is immense. You both know the weight of expectation on your shoulders, the hopes of two kingdoms resting on this union. It's less a joyful reunion and more a high-stakes job interview where the job is dynastic continuation, and the interview committee consists of every noble in the realm. The wedding itself is a grand affair, a public spectacle designed to showcase the power and wealth of both families. There are feasts, tournaments, and lavish displays of wealth. But beneath the pomp and circumstance, it is, at its heart, a legal transaction, a public affirmation of a political alliance. The vows are exchanged, the rings are placed, and the blessings are given. You are now husband and wife. But the most critical part, the one that truly validates the union and secures the future of both dynasties, is yet to come. This, my dear listener, is where things get truly medieval: the consummation. In many royal marriages, particularly those of great political importance, the bedding ceremony was a public or semi-public affair. After the wedding feast, the newly married couple would be escorted to their bedchamber by members of the court. Often, the bride would be undressed by her ladies-in-waiting, and the groom by his gentlemen. Then, with witnesses present in the room, or at least just outside the door, within earshot, the couple would be left to do their duty. This was not about romance or intimacy. It was about ensuring the legitimacy of any future heirs. The witnesses were there to attest that the marriage had, indeed, been consummated, thereby solidifying the legal and dynastic bond. Imagine the pressure. It's like having a performance review on your wedding night, with your boss and colleagues waiting just outside the door. Historians still debate the true frequency and intensity of these bedding ceremonies, and whether they were always strictly enforced or sometimes merely symbolic. But the underlying expectation of proof was certainly real. From that moment on, your life together is dictated by duty. Your primary function is to produce heirs, preferably healthy sons. Every pregnancy, every birth, is meticulously tracked and celebrated or mourned. Should a child be born, especially a male heir, the relief across the kingdom is palpable. Should there be no children, or only daughters, the pressure intensifies, and whispers of annulment or even divorce begin to circulate. Your personal happiness, your emotional connection, your individual desires are secondary, if they exist at all. You are tools, instruments in the grand, unending game of power. Love might, by some rare chance, blossom between you and your spouse, but it is never the reason for your union, nor is it a requirement for its continuation. You are bound by duty, by contract, and by the relentless, unyielding demands of the crown. The first tendrils of dawn don't just creep into your royal bedchamber. They're ushered in with a ceremony as old as the kingdom itself. You're not waking up to the gentle chime of an alarm or the soft glow of a smartphone. Oh no, your morning begins with the rustle of heavy velvet, the creak of ancient floorboards, and the hushed, almost reverent murmur of a dozen people already in your room. This isn't privacy, darling, this is a performance. As your eyes flutter open, you're greeted not by a loved one, but by the watchful, expectant gazes of your most intimate attendants. There's your first valet, whose sole purpose is to ensure your comfort and oversee your personal space. A space that, ironically, is never truly yours alone. Then there's the groom of the stool, a title that sounds rather quaint to modern ears, but whose role was profoundly significant. This individual was responsible for assisting you with your most private bodily functions, an act that might make anyone today squirm, but in medieval times it was a position of immense trust and proximity, often held by a nobleman of considerable standing. Imagine having a senior executive from your company watch you brush your teeth every morning. It's a bit like that, but with more dignity, apparently. The ritual of lever your official rising is a masterclass in choreographed hierarchy. First, your chamberlain enters, then your valets, followed by the pages, each with a specific task, a precise order of precedence. You don't just roll out of bed. You are uncovered. Your nightshirt is removed. Your dressing is a collaborative effort, layers of fine linen, silk, and will meticulously applied by gloved hands. Every button, every lace, every fold is placed with an almost sacred precision. You are, in essence, being assembled piece by opulent piece into the living symbol of your realm. It's less getting ready for the day and more like a human sculpture being prepared for public display. And trust me, every single person in that room is observing, assessing, and mentally filing away every detail of your demeanor, your health, your mood. There's no such thing as a bad hair day when you're royalty. There's only a potential diplomatic incident. Once dressed, or rather, adorned, your day truly begins, but still within the suffocating embrace of courtly ritual. You move from your bedchamber to your private chapel, a short procession that is itself a mini parade. Your personal chaplain walks ahead, perhaps a trusted confessor, followed by a retinue of monks or clerks, their voices a low, resonant hum as they chant. The air, even in the morning, is thick with the scent of beeswax candles and old incense, mingling with the faint, earthy smell of damp stone. Every step you take, every gesture you make, from the way you kneel during prayers to the precise moment you cross yourself, is dictated by custom and observed by all. This isn't just personal devotion. It's a public affirmation of your divine right to rule, a daily reminder to your court that your authority flows directly from God. It's a powerful message, delivered without a single spoken word, just the slow, deliberate rhythm of your morning. After chapel, the true vortex of palace life begins. The great hall or the audience chamber. This is the beating heart of your kingdom, a vast, echoing space where the entire social hierarchy of your court is on constant, vibrant display. The noise is a cacophony of hushed conversations, the rustle of rich fabrics, the clatter of servants, and the distant baying of hounds from the kennels. The air is a heady mix of expensive perfumes, stale ale, and the ever-present, faint whiff of unwashed bodies. Because while you might be meticulously groomed, not everyone in your sprawling court adhered to the same rigorous and often peculiar hygiene standards. Here, in the Great Hall, you are a fixed point in a swirling galaxy of power and ambition. Nobles, lesser lords, knights, squires, clerks, petitioners. They all vie for your attention, for a moment in your gaze, for the chance to whisper a word in your ear. But direct access to the monarch is a privilege reserved for the very few, and even then it is heavily mediated. Your chamberlain acts as a gatekeeper, your chancellor as a filter. Every petition, every grievance, every request for patronage must pass through layers of intermediaries, each one a potential bottleneck or an opportunity for influence. It's a constant, intricate dance of subtle gestures, knowing glances, and carefully chosen words. You learn to read the room, to discern genuine loyalty from thinly veiled ambition, to interpret the shifting currents of favor and disfavor. It's like being the CEO of a multinational corporation, but instead of emails, everyone communicates via elaborate bows and veiled threats. Lunch, or dinner as it was often called then, is another grand public spectacle. You don't simply grab a sandwich. Oh no, you are served. The procession of food from the kitchens to your high table is an event in itself, heralded by trumpets and accompanied by a retinue of servers, each carrying a dish with the solemnity of a religious relic. Before you even touch a morsel, the food taster performs their vital, if somewhat nerve-wracking, duty, sampling each dish to ensure it hasn't been enhanced by any ill-wishing parties. The mainstream historical fact here is that this practice of food tasting was incredibly common and essential for monarchs throughout the medieval period, a stark reminder of the constant threat of assassination by poison. As you eat, often with your closest advisors or favored guests at your table, the rest of the court dines in the lower parts of the hall, their eyes frequently darting towards you. The atmosphere is one of controlled revelry. Minstrels might play, jesters might offer witty, or sometimes surprisingly pointed, observations, but the overarching sense is one of decorum. Forget Netflix and chill. Your meals were minstrels and mealtime scrutiny. Even the way you hold your knife, forks were still a relative novelty for most of the era. The speed at which you eat, or the people you choose to acknowledge with a nod or a brief word, all carry weight. It's not about enjoying a meal. It's about performing the role of the monarch. The afternoons are filled with the business of ruling, but always in the company of your court. You might hold council meetings, issue decrees, hear legal cases, or receive ambassadors. Even in these seemingly serious moments, the underlying social hierarchy is always at play. Who sits where? Who speaks first? Who is permitted to stand in your presence and who must kneel? Every detail reinforces the pecking order. Your advisors aren't just offering counsel. They're performing their loyalty, their intelligence, their indispensability. The court is a stage, and everyone, from the lowliest scullery maid to the highest-ranking duke, has a part to play. A quirky tidbit that highlights the pervasive nature of this hierarchy is the role of the gentleman of the bedchamber or groom of the stool, not just at rising, but throughout the day. These individuals, often chosen for their loyalty and discretion, would accompany the monarch even to the privy, not just for assistance, but to ensure no secret documents were passed or plots hatched during such private moments. It speaks volumes about the absolute lack of personal space and the constant vigilance required of a ruler. Even when you needed a moment of quiet contemplation, you were never truly alone. As evening approaches, the rituals of the day begin to reverse themselves. The coucher, your official going-to-bed ceremony, mirrors the morning's lever. Attendants help you disrobe, carefully folding your elaborate garments. The last few members of your court are dismissed, each bowing or curtsying as they back out of your chamber. Even as you finally slip into your bed, perhaps with a final blessing from your chaplain, you are still aware of the guards posted just outside your door, the watchful presence that never truly leaves you. Historians still argue whether these elaborate rituals were primarily about exercising control over the monarch, or if they served a more profound symbolic purpose, reinforcing the stability and divine nature of the crown in a turbulent age. Perhaps it was both a gilded cage that simultaneously elevated and confined you. The constant surveillance, the perpetual performance, the suffocating embrace of etiquette. It all means that your life is never truly your own. Every action, every word, every gesture is part of a grand tapestry of power and prestige. You are less a person and more a living monument, a vessel for the kingdom's identity. And as the last candle flickers and the heavy chamber door clicks shut, you might find yourself longing for the simple, unobserved luxury of just being you. But in this life, you is inextricably linked to the crown, and the crown never truly sleeps. All right, settle in, because if you thought the strange journey of your royal life was over, think again. We're about to dive into a topic that, frankly, might make you wrinkle your nose a little, even from the safe distance of history. You see, when we picture royalty, we often imagine pristine, gleaming figures, draped in silks and jewels, smelling faintly of rosewater and power. Well, let's just say your daily reality, even as a king or queen, was a touch earthier. Welcome to the surprisingly grimy grandeur of medieval royal hygiene. Forget your morning shower, your carefully chosen soap, or even the concept of a daily rinse. For you, the very idea of cleanliness was fundamentally different. Water was a precious commodity, especially hot water. Heating enough of it for a full-body bath was an enormous undertaking, a logistical feat involving servants, wood, and a lot of patience. So, how often did you, the anointed monarch, actually immerse yourself in water? Perhaps once a month, if you were feeling particularly indulgent. For many, it was even less frequent, sometimes only a few times a year. Your yearly bath might have been more of a social event than a cleansing ritual, like a really damp, exclusive club. When you did decide to bathe, it wasn't a quick affair. A large wooden tub would be brought into your private chambers, sometimes lined with linen to prevent splinters. Servants would haul bucket after bucket of hot, often scented, water. Herbs like lavender, mint, and rosemary would be thrown in, not just for fragrance, but also for their supposed medicinal properties, believed to ward off illness or soothe the skin. Rose petals might float on the surface, adding a touch of luxury to an otherwise practical and rare experience. But even then, this wasn't about scrubbing away grime as we understand it. It was more about refreshment, a ritualistic purification, rather than a deep clean. The prevailing belief, held by many medieval physicians, was that opening the pores through hot water could make you vulnerable to disease. So, while you might enjoy the warmth for a moment, the idea of prolonged soaking was often viewed with suspicion. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly believed baths weakened them, or if it was more about the practical difficulties of heating enough water for an entire court. So, with infrequent full-body baths, how did you manage? Well, it was all about surface-level maintenance. You'd wake each morning, and your personal attendants would bring basins of water, often cold, and linen cloths. You'd perform what we might call a sponge bath, wiping down your face, hands, and other exposed areas. Perfumed waters, like rose water or orange blossom water, would be used, not just for a pleasant scent, but also to try and mask the inevitable body odor that accumulated between those rare full baths. You're basically a walking potpourri sachet, but with more personality. Your hair, if you were a woman, would be long and often elaborately styled, braided, and covered with veils or coifs. Washing it was an even rarer event than a full bath, perhaps a few times a year. Instead, your hair would be brushed rigorously, sometimes with powders made from scented herbs or flour to absorb oils. For men, shorter hair was more common, but still, daily washing was unheard of. The constant companion for both sexes, regardless of status, was lice. Yes, even royal heads played host to these tiny, unwelcome guests. Combs made of bone or ivory were used not just for styling, but for literally combing out lice and nits. It was a normal, accepted part of life. You'd see ladies in court idly picking at their hair, not out of boredom, but out of necessity. And what about your dazzling royal smile? Or perhaps not so dazzling? Dental hygiene was, to put it mildly, rudimentary. Toothbrushes, as we know them, didn't exist. Instead, you might chew on fresh herbs like mint or sage to freshen your breath, or rub your teeth with a rough cloth, sometimes dipped in a mixture of powdered herbs or even ash. Sugar was a luxury, but when consumed, its impact on your teeth was swift and brutal, especially without proper cleaning. Tooth decay, gum disease, and the eventual loss of teeth were incredibly common, even for royalty. You'd have to get used to the persistent, often unpleasant breath of your courtiers, and they, in turn, would have to tolerate yours. It was just the smell of medieval life. Now, let's talk about something a bit more personal. When nature called, what did you do? Well, if you were in your castle, you'd likely head to a garderobe. These were essentially stone chutes built into the castle walls, often leading down into the moat, a cesspit, or simply directly outside the castle walls. It was a rather efficient, if somewhat odoriferous, solution. Some larger castles even had multiple garderobes, essentially multi-stall privies. For a king or queen, you might have a more private garderobe within your personal chambers. But imagine the draft on a cold winter's night, or the lingering smells on a hot summer's day. If you weren't near a garderobe, or perhaps in your bedchamber at night, a chamber pot was your go-to. These ceramic or metal pots would be discreetly placed in a corner, often behind a screen. Servants, of course, were responsible for emptying them, and this brings us to one of the most delightfully bizarre, yet utterly essential roles in your royal court, the groom of the stool. This wasn't some minor attendant. This was a high-ranking noble, someone trusted implicitly. Their job? To assist you with your most private bodily functions, to help you clean yourself afterwards, and to manage the disposal of your waste. They were, in essence, your most intimate advisor, privy to your every movement. It truly was the most intimate advisor you could ever have, a position that speaks volumes about the lack of personal boundaries, even for royalty in this era. And once you'd done your business, what did you use for personal cleansing? Certainly not soft, perforated paper. Rags were common, but also hay, straw, leaves, or even just your bare hand, followed by a quick rinse in a basin of water. It was a practical, if not entirely pleasant, solution. The concept of germ theory was centuries away, so the notion of truly sanitizing surfaces or hands after such activities was completely absent. Your clothing, too, reflected these hygiene habits. While you wore magnificent outer garments of silk, velvet, and fur, these were rarely, if ever, washed. They were simply too valuable, too delicate, and too difficult to clean. Instead, you would wear linen undergarments, a chemise or smock, directly against your skin. These linen layers were absorbent and could be changed more frequently, perhaps every few days, and then boiled or washed to remove some of the grime and sweat. This was your primary defense against directly soiling your opulent outer layers. But imagine the accumulated smells, the faint mustiness that permeated everything, from your clothes to the tapestries on the walls. Fleas were another constant companion, not just in your hair, but in your clothing, your bedding, and scampering across the floors. People would often carry small bags of fragrant herbs, called pomanders, or even wear small pouches of animal fur, believed to attract fleas away from the body. It sounds rather counterintuitive, doesn't it? Here, little bloodsuckers, come to this lovely piece of fur, not me. It was a battle you waged daily, often with limited success. The air around you, even in your grandest halls, would have been a complex symphony of smells. Wood smoke, cooking fires, stale food, unwashed bodies, perfumed herbs, and the faint, ever-present scent of animals, both domestic and wild. So, while your life was one of immense privilege and power, it was also one lived in a constant state of what we would consider profound uncleanliness. Your grandeur was indeed grimy. The peculiar and often unsanitary personal care routines defined your royal cleanliness, or lack thereof, by modern standards. But within the context of your time, this was simply the way of the world. It was your normal, and you wouldn't have known any different. You stir, a dull ache throbbing behind your eyes, a persistent cough rattling your chest. The silken sheets, usually a comfort, now feel like a suffocating shroud. Ah, the joys of medieval royal health. You call for your chamberlain, your voice a raspy whisper, and within moments, the hushed panic begins to ripple through the palace. A royal illness isn't just a personal inconvenience. It's a national crisis, a divine test, and frankly, a massive headache for everyone involved. Your very being is intertwined with the stability of the realm, and a king or queen laid low is a kingdom vulnerable. Soon, the heavy oak doors creak open, admitting a procession that, to your modern eyes, might seem more like a bizarre theatrical troupe than a medical team. First, your most esteemed physicians, cloaked in rich, dark robes, their faces solemn and furrowed with an air of profound, if often misguided, wisdom. Behind them trail their apprentices, clutching leather-bound tomes and an assortment of curious tools. The air in your lavish bedchamber, already thick with the scent of stale rushes and unwashed bodies, despite your own efforts at cleanliness, as we discussed, now takes on new, pungent layers. Dried herbs, a faint metallic tang, and an unsettling whiff of, well, let's just say, things that have been in uncomfortably close proximity to other things. They approach your bed with a reverence usually reserved for a holy relic, which, in a way, you are. Your chief physician, Master Elias, a man whose beard could rival a small shrub, and whose eyes hold the permanent glaze of someone who's seen too many suspicious urine samples, bows deeply. He doesn't ask how you feel, not directly. Oh no, that would be far too simple. Instead, he embarks on a complex series of observations, beginning with your pulse. His fingers, surprisingly delicate despite their size, press against your wrist, counting, murmuring, as if deciphering a secret code only he understands. He then demands to see your tongue, which you dutifully stick out, feeling a bit like a grumpy, overgrown child. He nods, as if the slightly furry, pale surface confirms all his darkest suspicions. But the real diagnostic piece de resistance, the absolute cornerstone of medieval medical wisdom, is the uroscopy. Uroscopy, the examination of your urine. A chamber pot, often elaborately decorated, is presented, and you, with a sigh that feels like it scrapes your very soul, provide the sample. Master Elias then holds it up to the dim light filtering through the stained glass windows, swirling it, sniffing it, even, God forbid, tasting a tiny drop. Yes, you heard that right. Tasting. He's looking for color, clarity, sediment, even the presence of tiny worms that are, in fact, just natural precipitates. It's a bit like a medieval sommelier evaluating a fine vintage, except the vintage is your bodily waste. He might declare it too red, indicating an excess of blood, or too pale, suggesting a lack of vital heat. It's all part of the grand, complex, and utterly unscientific theory of the four humors. This is where medieval medicine truly shines in its uniqueness. The prevailing belief, held for centuries, was that your body was a delicate balance of four primary fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile choler, and black bile, melancholy. Each was associated with a specific temperament, season, and even organ. If you were ill, it meant one of your humors was out of whack: too much, too little, too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry. And the treatment? Why, to restore balance, of course. This mainstream historical fact about humoral theory dictated almost every medical intervention of the age. So, Master Elias, after much deliberation and perhaps a consultation with an astrological chart to see if the stars were aligned for a particularly bad day, or a good one for bloodletting, declares your illness to be an excess of blood. Too much warmth, too much passion, too much you. And the solution? To get rid of it. Enter the barber surgeon. Now, your royal physicians, like Master Elias, are often university-trained, learned men, versed in Latin texts and the works of Hippocrates and Galen. They diagnose. But when it comes to the nitty-gritty, the actual cutting and draining, that's often the domain of the barber surgeon. These were the multi-talented individuals who would trim your hair, shave your face, pull your teeth, and yes, perform minor surgeries. They were the general practitioners of their day, often more practical than theoretical. A basin is brought, gleaming dully in the low light. A tourniquet is tied around your arm, and a keen, shining lancet is produced. Your barber surgeon, a burly fellow with surprisingly gentle hands but an even more surprisingly strong grip, selects a vein. You wince, despite your royal fortitude, as the cold steel touches your skin, then the sharp prick. A thin stream of your royal blood, dark and rich, begins to flow into the basin. They'll often draw a specific amount, sometimes based on your age, the severity of your illness, or even the phase of the moon. It's called phlebotomy, and it's less like a precise medical procedure and more like a medieval plumbing job. Just letting out the bad bits, Your Majesty. The barber surgeon might murmur, as if your blood has suddenly decided to become sentient and evil. You lie there, feeling lightheaded, watching your life force drain away, hoping against hope that this is, in fact, helping and not just making you weaker. If bloodletting doesn't quite do the trick, or if your humors are thought to be unbalanced in a different way, other methods of purging might be employed. Emetics, for example. These are potions designed to make you vomit, often concocted from potent herbs or even ground-up minerals. The idea is to expel any excess phlegm or bile. Then there are enemas, administered with a long, often ornate, syringe, designed to clear out your lower tracts. The medieval doctor's mantra seems to be, if it's in you and it's bad, let's get it out. You spend your days alternating between feeling feverish, nauseous, and utterly humiliated. Beyond these rather aggressive physical interventions, your royal recovery also relies on a fascinating blend of natural remedies and outright superstition. Your physicians will prescribe a strict regimen of herbal concoctions, soothing teas made from chamomile or potent purgatives derived from senna. Poultices, warm and often smelling strongly of onion or mustard, might be applied to your chest to draw out illness. These herbal remedies, while sometimes effective for symptomatic relief, are often mixed with ingredients that would make a modern chemist scratch their head in bewilderment. Ground pearls for vitality, powdered unicorn horn, if you could get it and afford it, for purity, or even the blood of a specific animal for strength. It's a medieval smoothie of science, folklore, and wishful thinking. And then there's the truly peculiar. For instance, if you or one of your subjects suffered from scrofula, a form of tuberculosis that caused swollen lymph nodes in the neck, there was a very specific royal cure. It was believed that the monarch, by divine right, possessed the power to heal this ailment with a single touch. This was known as the king's touch or the queen's touch. You would hold a solemn ceremony, often in a church, where you would lay your hands upon the afflicted, sometimes giving them a gold coin with a hole in it to wear as an amulet. This quirky or fringe tidbit wasn't just a folk belief. It was a deeply ingrained part of royal propaganda, reinforcing the sacred nature of your rule. Imagine the pressure. Not only are you sick, but you're also expected to heal others while you're at it. It's like being asked to run a marathon while recovering from the flu. Amulets and charms are, of course, everywhere. You might wear a small bag of dried herbs around your neck, or a piece of parchment inscribed with a holy prayer, or even a specific gem believed to ward off disease. Your bedchamber might be filled with specific scents thought to purify the air, or you might have a relic of a saint brought to your bedside for divine intercession. The line between medicine, magic, and religion is wonderfully, bewilderingly blurred. Diet, too, plays a crucial role. Your meals, usually a lavish affair, are now strictly controlled. No rich meats or heavy sauces. Instead, light broths, boiled chicken, and perhaps some simple bread. Certain foods are considered hot or cold, wet or dry, and are prescribed or forbidden based on your perceived humoral imbalance. If you have a fever, too hot, you might be given watery, cooling foods. If you're lethargic, too cold and wet, warming, dry foods are the order of the day. It's a culinary dance dictated by ancient, often erroneous, theories. The recovery process is slow, fraught with uncertainty. Infections, unseen and untreatable, are a constant threat. A simple cut from a lancet or an unsterilized instrument could send you spiraling into a fatal fever. The concept of germ theory is centuries away, so cleanliness, beyond a cursory wipe, isn't a priority in the way we understand it. You're lucky if your physician washes his hands between patients, let alone sterilizes his tools. The sheer bravery, or perhaps desperation, of medieval patients is truly astonishing. As you lie there, enduring the purges and the potions, you can't help but wonder if any of this is actually working. And you wouldn't be alone in that thought. Historians still argue whether medieval medical practices, particularly bloodletting, did more harm than good, or if the strong constitution of the patient and the placebo effect were the true heroes of any recovery. While some herbal remedies did possess genuine medicinal properties, the overall framework of humoral theory often led to treatments that were, at best, ineffective and at worst, actively detrimental. It's a fascinating, if terrifying, thought experiment. Would you rather have a medieval doctor or no doctor at all? Sometimes the answer feels like a coin toss. Eventually, after weeks of feeling wretched, the fever breaks, the cough subsides. You begin to regain your strength slowly, painstakingly. Master Elias, beaming like he's just invented penicillin, takes full credit, attributing your recovery to his precise calculations and the perfect balance he restored to your humors. You, exhausted but alive, simply nod, too weary to argue. You've survived another brush with medieval medicine, a testament not just to your royal constitution, but perhaps to sheer dumb luck. And as you drift off into a fitful sleep, you can almost hear the gentle murmur of the barber surgeon sharpening his lancet, just in case. You thought living in a grand castle was the life, didn't you? A fixed address, reliable plumbing or lack thereof, as we've discussed, and a kitchen always ready to whip up a medieval feast. Well, darling, let me gently disabuse you of that notion. Your royal existence, for much of the medieval period, was less about settling down and more about, well, never settling down. Welcome to the relentless, often brutal reality of the royal progress. Imagine, if you will, that your entire life is one never-ending, incredibly slow, and utterly exhausting road trip. Your palace isn't a single stone edifice. It's a movable feast, a sprawling, lumbering beast of humanity, animals, and possessions that constantly shifts across the landscape. You are, in essence, a CEO whose headquarters are perpetually under construction, relocating every few weeks or months. This wasn't some grand tour for pleasure, mind you. This was the very backbone of medieval governance. Without modern communication or transportation, the only way to effectively rule your scattered kingdom was to physically be there. To see, to be seen, to hear petitions, to dispense justice, and crucially, to consume the resources of your various estates. It's hard to imagine, in our age of instant connectivity, a time when the king's very presence was the strongest form of law. So picture the dawn. Not a peaceful, rosy glow, but a chaotic symphony of grunts, shouts, and the clatter of 1,000 preparations. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth, unwashed bodies, and the nervous energy of hundreds, sometimes thousands, of people preparing to move. This wasn't just your immediate family and a few guards. Oh no, this was your entire royal household. Your privy councillors, your clerks, your chaplains, your squires, your knights, your cooks, your laundresses, your stable hands, your musicians, your jesters, your falconers, your entire wardrobe staff, and a veritable army of servants whose sole purpose was to pack, unpack, and repack. We're talking about a retinue that could easily number 500 to 1,000 people, and sometimes even more, especially for major events or during wartime. English monarchs, like the formidable Edward I, were particularly notorious for their peripatetic reigns, with records showing he traveled over 40,000 miles during his time on the throne, a staggering distance by any measure, let alone medieval. And what about your stuff? Every last goblet, every embroidered tapestry, every important document, every piece of furniture that wasn't bolted down had to be carefully dismantled, wrapped, loaded onto carts, and then painstakingly reassembled at the next stop. Forget your toothbrush? Try forgetting your entire treasury. It was a logistical marvel, or perhaps a logistical nightmare, depending on your perspective and the state of the roads. You even brought your own bed, your very own royal mattress, often a luxurious affair stuffed with feathers or down, because you certainly weren't going to sleep on just any old straw palliasse. This particular quirk meant that your sleeping arrangements, at least, offered a consistent, if constantly moving, slice of comfort amidst the chaos. Imagine the poor souls whose job it was to ensure your royal slumber wasn't disturbed by a rogue bump in the road or a missing bedpost. The procession itself was a sight to behold, a moving spectacle of power and wealth. At the front, your standard bearers, trumpeters, and heralds, announcing your approach. Then came your personal guard, heavily armed and watchful. You, the monarch, would often ride on horseback, or if the weather was foul or you were indisposed, in a cumbersome, jolting litter or carriage, probably less comfortable than a modern economy airline seat. Behind you stretched the endless line of pack horses, mules, and ox-drawn carts, laden with everything from kitchen pots to court records. The sheer length of this cavalcade could stretch for miles, a slow-moving river of humanity and possessions winding its way through the narrow, often poorly maintained tracks that passed for roads. And roads is a generous term. Most were little more than ancient pathways, churned into muddy quagmires by rain or choked with dust in dry spells. Crossing rivers meant finding a ford or a rickety bridge, often after lengthy detours. The pace was agonizingly slow, perhaps 10 to 20 miles a day on a good day, less if the weather turned foul or a cart wheel broke, which, of course, they frequently did. Every breakdown meant a halt, a flurry of activity, and further delays. You'd be up before dawn, riding for hours, often in silence save for the creak of leather and the squelch of mud, only to arrive at your destination as dusk fell, exhausted and often mud-splattered. Upon arrival, the chaos didn't end. The advance party, sent ahead days or even weeks earlier, would have done their best to prepare the manor house, abbey, or castle that was your temporary residence. But imagine trying to accommodate hundreds of people, not just in terms of sleeping quarters, but food, water, and sanitation. The local population would be pressed into service, their resources strained to the breaking point. Livestock would be requisitioned, grain would be consumed, and the local lord would have to scramble to provide for your enormous appetite. It's enough to make a modern festival organizer weep with envy or horror. And the waste. The sheer volume of waste generated by such a large group of people on the move was astounding. Your office was less a corner cubicle and more a very large, very muddy parade. This constant movement wasn't just for show. It was a vital administrative tool. By moving your court, you were physically bringing your government to the people. Petitions could be heard directly by you or your council. Disputes could be settled. Taxes could be collected, or at least their collection overseen. Loyalty could be reinforced through your visible presence. It was a way to keep your diverse kingdom cohesive, preventing local lords from becoming too independent and reminding everyone who was truly in charge. It also served a practical purpose in a pre-industrial world. A large court would quickly deplete the resources of any one estate. By moving, you allowed the land to recover, ensuring a continuous supply of provisions. However, the royal progress was also fraught with peril. Beyond the discomfort of travel, there was the constant threat of ambush by bandits, though your large armed escort usually deterred all but the most desperate. More insidious was the threat of disease. Moving from place to place, often staying in less than hygienic conditions, meant you and your retinue were constantly exposed to local ailments. A sudden outbreak of dysentery or the dreaded plague could decimate your court, highlighting the fragility of even royal life. The sheer physical toll on you was immense. Long hours in the saddle, exposure to the elements, irregular meals, and the constant mental strain of governing on the go, all contributed to a life that was far from luxurious in its daily grind. Historians still argue whether the primary driver for these extensive royal progresses was administrative efficiency, a deliberate strategy to exert control and dispense justice, or simply the necessity of feeding such a vast retinue without depleting any single region's resources beyond recovery. Perhaps it was a potent blend of both, a pragmatic solution born of necessity that evolved into a powerful symbol of royal authority. Regardless, it was an exhausting existence. You rarely knew true privacy or quiet. Even when you arrived at a new location, the work continued. Your temporary chambers would be set up, petitions would be heard, documents would be signed, and the endless machinery of government would grind on, often well into the night. Your moments of respite might be found in a brief hunt or a game of chess, but the underlying current of constant readiness to move, to decide, to command, was always present. So, next time you complain about a long car ride or a delayed flight, spare a thought for your medieval royal self. You weren't just going on a trip. You were the government on the move, a traveling spectacle of power and endurance, leaving a trail of exhausted servants, relieved villagers, once you'd left, that is, and a legacy of constantly shifting, yet remarkably effective, governance. It was a weird, wild, and utterly demanding way to rule a kingdom. And tomorrow, the whole exhausting cycle begins again. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long, lazy shadows across your tapestried chambers, your thoughts often drift to the evening's repast. Forget your modern-day dilemmas of choosing between takeout options. For you, a medieval monarch, dinner isn't just a meal. It's a meticulously choreographed spectacle, a display of power, wealth, and sometimes, a test of your digestive fortitude. You're not just eating, you are feasting. And let me tell you, these aren't your grandmother's potlucks. Imagine, if you will, being led into the great hall, the air thick with the scent of roasting meat, wood smoke, and a dizzying array of spices. The tables groan under the weight of platters, each dish a testament to your kingdom's bounty and your kitchen's tireless efforts. This is where your royal gastronomy truly shines, or perhaps bewilders. The sheer volume of food is staggering. Course after course arrives, seemingly without end. You might start with delicate pottages, thick, savory stews of grains and vegetables, sometimes with a bit of game. Then come the roasts. Whole boars, swans, peacocks, even sometimes porpoises, all presented with their feathers or skin reattached for dramatic effect. Picture a roasted peacock, resplendent in its iridescent plumage, looking as though it's just landed on your table rather than having been plucked and cooked. It's less about culinary finesse and more about visual impact. You can almost hear the court murmuring, "Oh, look at that bird. The king truly is magnificent." It's like a medieval version of an Instagram food influencer, except the likes are nods of approval from your nobles. And the meat. Oh, the meat. It's a carnivore's dream or perhaps a modern nutritionist's nightmare. Venison, beef, pork, lamb, fowl of every imaginable kind, it dominates your plate. While you might expect a king to have access to endless variety, the truth is the core components of your diet are surprisingly monotonous. It's meat, and more meat, often prepared with similar heavy sauces and a liberal hand with expensive spices like cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. These aren't just for flavor. They're status symbols, imported from far-off lands at great cost. To use them so freely is to flaunt your wealth. Sometimes you find yourself wishing for a simple salad, but alas, fresh vegetables are often seen as peasant fare or at best an accessory to the main meaty event. One of the quirky aspects of these banquets is the subtlety. Not a subtle flavor, but an elaborate edible sculpture. These could be anything from castles made of pastry, mythical creatures crafted from sugar and marzipan, or even allegorical scenes depicting a recent victory or a noble's marriage. They're designed to awe and amuse, often brought out with great ceremony. Imagine a sugar dragon breathing smoke, perhaps incense or dry ice if they had it back then, as it's carried to your table. It's like a medieval cake boss on steroids, but the creations are meant to be admired more than eaten, eventually crumbling under the weight of their own grandeur. But the feasting isn't constant. The rhythm of your medieval life, and indeed your stomach, is dictated by the church. Fasts are as integral to your diet as feasts, and they are far more restrictive than merely giving up chocolate for Lent. You are expected to observe numerous fast days throughout the year, every Friday, every Wednesday, every Saturday, the entire period of Lent, 40 days before Easter, Advent, the weeks leading up to Christmas, and various vigils before major saints' days. During these times, the consumption of meat, eggs, and dairy products is strictly forbidden. This means no succulent roasts, no rich cheeses, no creamy custards. For a monarch accustomed to such opulence, these periods can be a genuine challenge, both spiritually and gastronomically. Your royal kitchens, however, are masters of adaptation. Instead of meat, you feast on fish, and not just your common carp. Think sturgeon, salmon, pike, eels, and even whales and porpoises, considered fish for fasting purposes due to their aquatic nature. Your chefs become incredibly inventive with fish dishes, often disguising them to resemble meat, using elaborate sauces and spices to make them more palatable. You might have mock meat dishes made from ground fish mixed with almonds and spices, shaped to look like a joint of venison. It's like a medieval vegan trying to make a convincing plant-based burger, but with more scales. And while you might think fasting means going hungry, that's rarely the case for you. Your fasting meals are still abundant, just different. You consume vast quantities of bread, often made from coarser grains than you'd prefer but still plentiful. Vegetables like cabbage, onions, and root vegetables feature more prominently, along with dried fruits and nuts. Wine, thankfully, is always permitted, often watered down but still flowing freely. It's a reminder that even in piety, your royal status ensures you are never truly deprived. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The medieval diet, particularly for the nobility, was incredibly high in protein and carbohydrates, with very little fresh fruit and vegetables. This imbalance, combined with a lack of understanding of hygiene and food preservation, often led to various health issues. Gout, a painful form of arthritis caused by high levels of uric acid, was remarkably common among the wealthy, often linked directly to their rich, meat-heavy diets and copious consumption of wine. You've probably felt the telltale twinge in your toe more than once after a particularly indulgent banquet. Now, for a quirkier tidbit, the role of the taster. Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. Before you, the monarch, could partake in any dish, a designated taster would sample it first. This wasn't just a formality. It was a grim necessity in an age rife with political intrigue and the very real threat of poisoning. Imagine having a job where every mouthful could be your last. It's like a permanent game of Russian roulette, but with a spoon. You watch them, always, a subtle flicker of anxiety in your eyes until they give the all clear, and only then do you pick up your own spoon. The logistics behind these royal kitchens are mind-boggling. They are veritable industrial complexes, bustling with hundreds of staff. Master cooks, scullions, bakers, butchers, larderers, sauciers, spit-turners, and even specific officers for the buttery, drinks, and pantry, bread. Imagine the noise, the heat, the sheer physical effort required to feed a court that could number in the hundreds, sometimes thousands, especially when you're on a royal progress. Everything is done by hand, from grinding spices to turning massive spits over roaring fires. It's an orchestra of culinary chaos, all orchestrated to ensure your plate is never empty. Feasts are also prime opportunities for entertainment and political maneuvering. Minstrels perform, jesters crack jokes, some of which you genuinely find amusing, others less so, and acrobats tumble. But beneath the merriment, eyes are constantly scanning, alliances are subtly forged, and whispers of power circulate. Your dining table is, in many ways, an extension of your throne room. The seating arrangements, the order in which dishes are served, even the size of the portions, all carry symbolic weight, signaling favor or disfavor among your courtiers. One aspect that historians still argue whether it was truly common or more of a romanticized notion is the practice of subtlety, in its other meaning, the use of very delicate, almost imperceptible flavorings or methods of preparation. While we know they used strong spices liberally, some scholars suggest that truly elite chefs could also create dishes with nuanced flavors, rather than just overwhelming the palate with richness and spice. Was medieval gastronomy merely about excess, or did it also possess a hidden artistry known only to the most skilled practitioners? The truth likely lies somewhere in between, depending on the chef and the occasion. Ultimately, your royal diet is a paradox, a display of unimaginable wealth and abundance, yet often lacking in the simple variety and nutritional balance that even a modern commoner takes for granted. You might crave a fresh apple, a crisp salad, or perhaps just a meal that doesn't involve another roasted animal. But that's the price of being a medieval monarch. Your plate is a testament to your power, even if it sometimes leaves your palate and your digestive system utterly exhausted. You eat not just for sustenance, but for spectacle, for status, for the very fabric of your rule. You stir from your slumber, the first rays of morning peeking through the narrow, leaded glass windows of your bedchamber. But this isn't a morning for lounging in your silken nightshirt. Oh no, this is a morning for transformation, for encasing yourself in the very fabric of your power, which, let's be honest, feels more like being encased in a very elaborate, very expensive, and utterly unyielding sarcophagus. Welcome to the daily ritual of medieval royal fashion, where comfort is a peasant's luxury and your clothes are less about personal expression and more about shouting your status from the rooftops, often at the expense of being able to, move freely. Imagine, if you will, being a walking, breathing billboard for your kingdom's wealth. Every thread, every stitch, every jewel is a carefully curated statement. Your day begins with the arrival of your personal valets and pages, a small army dedicated solely to the monumental task of getting you dressed. First, the undergarments. A fine linen chemise, soft against your skin, and a pair of loose linen braies, which are essentially medieval boxer shorts. So far, so comfortable. A brief moment of peace before the sartorial assault begins. Next come the hose or chausses. These are essentially individually tailored leggings, often made of fine wool or even silk, cut on the bias to give them stretch and then meticulously sewn to fit your legs like a second skin. They're often laced to your braies or to a belt around your waist. You feel them hugging your calves, pulling slightly as they're smoothed into place. It's a bit like trying to put on skinny jeans after a large meal, but every single day. The fabric is thick, the fit precise, and you already feel the first subtle hint of restriction. Over this, a tunic or coat-hardie is lowered over your head. For a man of your standing, this isn't just a simple shirt. It's a garment often made of sumptuous fabrics like velvet, silk, or brocade, lined with contrasting colors or even fur. It's fitted through the torso, sometimes buttoned down the front, with sleeves that might be wide and flowing, or tight and buttoned all the way to the wrist. You feel the weight of the fabric settle on your shoulders, the rich, deep colors reflecting the dim morning light. Red, blue, green, all vibrant, all expensive. But the most coveted, the most eye-wateringly costly, is crimson. A mainstream historical fact is that the brilliant, deep crimson dye, often derived from the cochineal insect, was so incredibly expensive and difficult to produce that it was almost exclusively reserved for royalty and the highest nobility, a true mark of supreme wealth and power. Owning a garment in such a shade was like driving a solid gold car today. Then comes the houppelande, the true showstopper. This is your outer gown, a voluminous, often floor-length garment that could be open or closed, with sleeves so wide and long they practically sweep the floor, sometimes dagged, cut into decorative points or strips, or even lined with fur. As it settles over you, you feel the sheer volume of fabric, layer upon layer of silk, velvet, and perhaps gold-threaded brocade. It's heavy, surprisingly so, draping around you like a ceremonial tent. You might try to stretch your arms out, only to find the sleeves have a mind of their own, perhaps catching on something or simply refusing to allow full extension. It's a bit like trying to do jumping jacks in a sleeping bag. And the fur. Oh, the fur. For you, only the finest would do. Ermine, with its stark white pelt and contrasting black tips, is the ultimate symbol of royalty, often lining your cloaks, the collars of your houppelans, or even trimming your sleeves. You can feel its soft, dense warmth against your skin, but also its subtle weight. Other furs like sable or marten might also be used, adding another layer of visual opulence and actual warmth. In a drafty medieval castle, that warmth is certainly appreciated, but the sheer bulk and the knowledge of where it came from, RIP, countless small animals, adds a peculiar dimension to your morning routine. Now let's talk about your feet. While others might slip on simple leather shoes, your footwear is a statement in itself. The polaines or krakows. These are shoes with ridiculously elongated, pointed toes, sometimes extending a foot or more beyond your actual foot. As your foot slides into the soft leather, you feel the absurd length of the toe. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that some extreme polaines were so long they actually had to be stuffed with moss or whalebone to maintain their shape, and occasionally even had a small chain connecting the tip of the toe to a garter just below the knee, simply to prevent you from tripping over your own feet. Imagine trying to walk down a spiral staircase or navigate a crowded great hall with what feels like two small, leather-clad torpedoes leading the way. It's less walking, more a series of careful shuffles, a constant internal monologue of, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip. It's like trying to navigate a party in oversized clown shoes, but with everyone expecting you to look graceful and regal. Good luck with that. Finally, the accessories. Your fingers are adorned with rings, heavy and often set with large, uncut gemstones. Brooches, often jeweled and intricately crafted, fasten your cloaks or adorn your chest. And of course, the crown. It's not just for coronations, though the most elaborate might be reserved for such grand occasions. Smaller, lighter crowns or circlets might be worn daily, or perhaps an elaborate velvet hat adorned with jewels and feathers, known as a chaperone. As it's placed on your head, you feel its weight, a constant reminder of the physical burden of your status. The glint of gold and the sparkle of rubies and sapphires catch the light, a dazzling display. So you are fully dressed. You stand there, a magnificent, jewel-encrusted, fur-lined, velvet-clad monument to medieval power. But how do you feel? You feel the constant pressure of the fabrics, the weight of the layers, the restricted movement. Every gesture, every step is an effort. Your houppelande, while beautiful, makes it challenging to sit comfortably on a chair that isn't specifically designed for its voluminous folds. Your long, trailing sleeves might dip into your food at dinner or snag on door frames. You can't just casually lean against a wall. You're too stiff, too much of a walking sculpture. It's a constant battle between looking the part and actually being able to function. The sheer cost of your wardrobe is astronomical. Entire estates could be mortgaged to afford a single royal garment. The gold and silver threads woven into the fabric, the hundreds of pearls and gemstones sewn onto collars and cuffs, the rare dyes, the imported silks from distant lands, it all adds up to a fortune. You are literally wearing your kingdom's treasury. And because these garments are so precious, they are not easily washed. Imagine wearing multiple layers of heavy, unwashed fabrics day in and day out. While undergarments might be changed and laundered more frequently, the outer layers, the ones that scream, "I am royalty," are simply aired out, brushed, and perhaps dabbed at. The concept of a quick machine wash is centuries away, and the thought of dry cleaning would be utterly alien. So, while you look magnificent, there's a subtle, underlying scent of, well, old clothes. This opulent constraint isn't just about personal discomfort. It's a deliberate social tool. Sumptuary laws, though often flouted, existed to dictate who could wear what, preventing commoners from mimicking the elite. Your clothing is designed to create an unbridgeable visual gap between you and your subjects. It ensures that no one could ever mistake you for anything less than divinely appointed. You couldn't just pop to the local market for a scone, even if you wanted to, because your attire would immediately identify you as someone requiring an entourage and a parade, not a quick errand. It's a gilded cage, in a way. You spend your days navigating the court, your movements precise, almost deliberate, because any sudden motion might snag a sleeve, or wrinkle a precious fabric, or worse, make you trip over your own absurdly long shoes. Conversations are held with a certain stiffness, your posture dictated by the weight and cut of your garments. Even sitting on your throne feels like a performance, not a rest. You are always on display, and your clothes are your stage. Historians still argue whether the extreme fashion trends, like ridiculously long polaines or towering hennons, for women, those conical hats that made them look like medieval unicorns, were primarily driven by individual royal whim, competitive display among courts, or a more organic societal evolution of taste, a collective madness for novelty. Perhaps it was a bit of all three, a sartorial arms race where each court tried to outbling the other, pushing the boundaries of practicality to new, hilarious extremes. One can only imagine the medieval equivalent of a fashion critic column. King Reginald's new Hoopaland, while undeniably regal, does seem to have swallowed 3 small pages and a dog. A bold choice, but perhaps less practical for, say, a joust. So, as you finally make your way to the Great Hall for breakfast, a procession of rustling silk and heavy velvet, you are a living, breathing testament to the weirdness of medieval royalty. You look magnificent, undeniably powerful, and probably just a little bit itchy. And you haven't even had your first cup of watered-down wine yet. You might imagine your days as a medieval monarch were filled with endless meetings and solemn pronouncements. And yes, there was plenty of that. But even a king or queen needed to unwind, to find diversion from the heavy crown. And what passed for relaxation in your era? Well, it often involved a surprising amount of grit, danger, and a certain lack of modern safety regulations. Your leisure, much like your reign, was rarely dull, often dangerous, and always, in its own peculiar way, utterly captivating. One of your primary pastimes, a pursuit that blended sport, sustenance, and military training, was the royal hunt. This was less a casual hobby and more a fundamental pillar of your royal existence. You rise before the sun, the air crisp and biting, carrying the earthy scent of the forest floor mingled with the sharp tang of horse and hound. Your hunt master, a man of immense experience and even greater lung capacity, bellows orders, his voice cutting through the early morning quiet. This isn't just a casual stroll with a gun. This is a carefully orchestrated event, a display of your power over nature itself. You're astride a powerful destrier, its muscles rippling beneath you, eager for the chase. The hounds, a pack of specially bred mastiffs and gaze hounds, strain at their leashes, their deep, resonant barks vibrating through your chest. You're tracking not just deer, but often much more dangerous game, wild boars with their razor-sharp tusks, or even, in some regions, a formidable bear. Each successful kill is a testament to your prowess, a physical manifestation of your right to rule. It's a far cry from casually picking up a prepackaged steak at the grocery store, isn't it? Your Fitbit, if such a device existed, would be very impressed with your step count and heart rate during one of these expeditions. And while it's undeniably exhilarating, there's always that undercurrent of danger. A misjudged charge, a boar's unexpected turn, a fall from your horse, and your reign could end right there, in a muddy tangle of hooves and fury. But the hunt was also deeply ritualistic. Once the magnificent beast was brought down, particularly a stag, the curie would commence, the precise dismemberment of the animal, with specific portions reserved for the hounds, and a horn blown for each stage. It was a messy, blood-soaked affair, but deeply symbolic, reinforcing the hierarchy of the hunt and your dominion over nature. Royal forests, it's worth noting, were jealously guarded, often covering vast tracts of land, and commoners caught poaching your deer faced brutal penalties, sometimes even death. This wasn't just about protecting your game. It was about asserting your ultimate authority over the land and its resources. And it wasn't just large game that occupied your hunting instincts. The sky itself was your hunting ground, particularly with the noble art of falconry. Imagine the weight of the hooded bird on your gloved wrist, its sharp talons gently gripping, its keen eyes hidden. With a flick of your hand, it soars, a feathered arrow released into the heavens, chasing smaller birds with breathtaking speed. This was a pastime of immense prestige, requiring incredible patience, skill, and a small fortune to maintain your prized gerfalcons or peregrines. It was also a subtle display of power, a demonstration of your ability to control and command even the wild. Historians still argue whether the elaborate rituals and significant expense associated with falconry were primarily for sport or a deeper form of diplomatic exchange and status signaling among monarchs. The bond you formed with your trained bird was unique, a quiet understanding between human and raptor. But perhaps the most spectacular, and certainly the most overtly brutal of your pastimes were the tournaments. These weren't just games. They were grand spectacles, a blend of martial training, social gathering, and pure, unadulterated risk. The air in the lists is thick with the cheers and gasps of hundreds, perhaps thousands of spectators. Banners emblazoned with the coats of arms of the most powerful families flutter from every vantage point, a vibrant tapestry against the sky. Ladies in their finest silks and velvets watch from specially constructed viewing stands, their colorful gowns a stark contrast to the gleaming, brutal steel below. You, too, are a participant, perhaps even competing yourself, or at the very least, presiding as the ultimate judge and patron. The joust, that iconic clash of mounted knights, is the centerpiece. You sit astride your warhorse, its heavy barding clanking with every nervous shift, the roar of the crowd a deafening wave against the wooden stands. The scent of sweat, dust, and anticipation hangs heavy in the air. You grip the heavy lance, its tip blunted for justs of peace, but still capable of delivering bone-shattering force. Your opponent, a formidable knight in gleaming steel, charges from the opposite end of the lists, a thunderous echo of hooves preceding him. The impact, when it comes, is jarring, a splintering crash of wood, a sickening thud of armor against armor. Lances shatter, helms are dented, and often, knights are unseated with a truly spectacular, often painful, sprawl into the dirt. Think of it as the medieval Super Bowl, but with more splinters, a much higher chance of concussion, and absolutely no commercial breaks. Your health insurance, bless its non-existent heart, definitely wouldn't cover this. Tournaments, especially jousting, evolved significantly over the medieval period, from chaotic free-for-alls into highly ritualized events with strict rules and elaborate pageantry. They served as crucial training grounds for knights, kept their skills sharp, and provided a powerful display of aristocratic military might and wealth. But the joust was just one act in this violent play. Often, the day would culminate in the melee, a chaotic, swirling mock battle involving dozens of knights. This was less about individual glory and more about team strategy. A brutal free-for-all where knights would clash with blunted swords and axes, attempting to capture opponents for ransom. The dust would rise in clouds, obscuring the grim reality of the struggle, the clang of steel on steel a constant, jarring symphony. It was a test of endurance, skill, and sheer brute force, a visceral reminder that even your leisure activities were a constant rehearsal for the grim realities of warfare. The ground, by the end of such an event, was often churned into a muddy, blood-streaked mire, a testament to the raw energy expended. When the weather turned foul, or the desire for less bone-jarring entertainment struck, you retreated to the warmth of the castle hall. Here, the brutal gave way to the intellectual, though often no less competitive. Chess was a favorite, a complex game of strategy that mirrored the intricate political maneuvers of your court. The quiet click of carved ivory pieces on a wooden board, the hushed murmurs of concentration, the subtle triumphs and defeats. It was a mental workout, a way to sharpen your strategic mind. No Candy Crush for you, just good old-fashioned brain teasers that could last for hours. Dice games, backgammon, and other board games were also popular, often accompanied by considerable gambling. You might wager a substantial sum, perhaps a piece of jewelry, a horse, or even a small parcel of land. Your version of game night involved actual risk of losing a small fortune, adding a layer of tension that modern board games rarely achieve. And here's a quirky tidbit. Medieval dice were not always perfectly balanced, leading to a certain charming unpredictability in outcomes. This only added to the thrill or perhaps the frustration of the game. Beyond the games, your court also provided a more refined form of entertainment. Minstrels with their lutes and harps would fill the hall with music, their voices weaving tales of chivalry and romance. Jesters, with their sharp wit and often surprisingly insightful observations, provided laughter and a much-needed dose of irreverence. You might listen to epic poems, watch acrobats, or even enjoy the performance of traveling players. These were moments of respite, glimpses of beauty and humor amidst the often harsh realities of your royal life. These pastimes, from the thrill of the hunt to the strategic quiet of a chess match, were more than just ways to pass the time. They were integral to your identity as a medieval monarch. They trained you for war, displayed your power and wealth, provided a means for social bonding and rivalry, and offered a crucial outlet for the immense pressures of leadership. They were a vivid reflection of a world that valued physical prowess, strategic thinking, and a certain robust indifference to personal safety. The echoes of hounds, the clang of steel, the quiet click of dice, these were the sounds of your royal downtime, a brutal symphony played out against the backdrop of your grand, yet often perilous, existence. The tapestries that line your stone walls are thick, designed to keep out the chill, but they do little to muffle the whispers that echo through your halls. As a medieval royal, you quickly learn that your palace isn't just a home. It's a living, breathing organism, constantly shifting, constantly vying for air and light. And you, my dear, are the sun around which all these planets orbit, some drawing closer for warmth, others trying to eclipse you entirely. This is the world of court intrigue, a subtle, often silent, battle for power and influence, and you are always in the thick of it. Imagine waking each morning not just to the clamor of servants and the scent of wood smoke, but to the invisible hum of ambition. Every courtier, every noble, every distant cousin who has managed to secure a place within your immediate orbit has an agenda. They aren't just here for the free meals and the occasional jousting tournament, though those are certainly perks. No, they are here for you. They want your ear, your favor, your signature on a document that will grant them more land, a better title, a strategic marriage for their progeny, or perhaps even a position on your coveted royal council. You learn to read faces with an almost supernatural acuity. The overly effusive praise from Lord Beaumont, who smiles a little too wide. Is he truly loyal, or is he buttering you up before requesting a lucrative trade concession? The quiet, watchful gaze of Lady Eleanor, who rarely speaks but misses nothing. Is she a trusted confidant, or is she gathering intelligence for her powerful family, who reside just a few days' ride away? It's like a never-ending game of medieval chess, except the pieces are constantly changing sides, and sometimes they try to eat each other. You quickly understand that the phrase, "keep your friends close and your enemies closer," isn't just a quaint saying. It's practically your daily mantra. Your days are a constant performance, a balancing act. You receive petitions from dawn till dusk, a never-ending stream of requests and complaints. A dispute over a mill, a plea for justice against a tyrannical knight, a subtle hint that a neighboring lord is growing too powerful. Each one requires your attention, your judgment, and your careful consideration of who is presenting it and why. Courtiers, ever eager to gain an advantage, would often try to bribe the lower-ranking officials who managed the flow of these petitions, hoping to get their own requests placed at the top of the pile, or even to have rivals' petitions misplaced entirely. It's a bit like trying to manage your email inbox when everyone else has figured out how to spam you with urgent flags. The heart of this intricate web is your royal council. This isn't just a group of wise old men sitting around a table. It's a dynamic, often volatile, collection of the most powerful and influential figures in your realm. They are your closest advisors, your military commanders, your legal experts, and your spiritual guides. And they are all, without exception, maneuvering for supremacy. This constant struggle for positions and influence within the King's Council is a mainstream historical fact, defining much of the political landscape of medieval courts. Each appointment, each dismissal, sends ripples through the entire court, creating new alliances and fresh enmities. You observe the subtle cues. A noble who suddenly starts dressing in the same colors as your most trusted advisor, or who begins echoing their opinions during council meetings, is likely trying to align themselves with that faction. Another who pointedly avoids eye contact with a rival, or who makes a disparaging remark about their lineage under their breath, is clearly signaling a feud. It's like watching a particularly intense season of a historical reality TV show, where the backstabbing is literal and the eliminations can be rather permanent. And you, the monarch, are the judge, jury, and sometimes the next target. Gossip, of course, is the lifeblood of the court. It flows like a murky river, carrying all sorts of debris, half-truths, outright fabrications, and carefully crafted slanders. A whispered rumor about a noble's alleged disloyalty, or a lady's supposed indiscretion, can destroy reputations and shift allegiances overnight. You learn to listen to everything, believe nothing immediately, and cross-reference information like a medieval detective trying to solve a particularly convoluted mystery. Sometimes you even employ your own network of informers, subtle spies who blend into the background, listening at keyholes and reporting back on who is meeting whom and what secrets are being exchanged in hushed tones after the evening meal. One particularly quirky tidbit about this constant surveillance and information gathering involved the use of jesters. While seemingly there for amusement, the court jester, often perceived as a harmless fool, was sometimes an invaluable conduit for information. They could wander freely, overhear conversations, and even deliver subtle messages or criticisms that no one else dared utter directly to the monarch. Their foolish observations often contained sharp political insights, cloaked in humor. They were the original social media influencers, but instead of viral dances, they spread vital intel. The pressure is immense. Every decision you make, every word you utter, is scrutinized, analyzed, and often twisted to serve someone else's agenda. You must appear strong, decisive, and in control, even when you feel like you're navigating a labyrinth blindfolded. You learn to choose your words carefully, to give nothing away, to maintain an inscrutable facade. The weight of the crown isn't just the gold and jewels. It's the constant, suffocating awareness that everyone around you wants something, and many of them are willing to do almost anything to get it. This constant vigilance breeds a profound sense of isolation. You are surrounded by people, yet truly alone. Whom can you trust? Your most loyal knight might be secretly ambitious. Your most devout confessor might be relaying your deepest thoughts to a powerful bishop. Even your own family members, your siblings, uncles, or cousins, can be your most dangerous rivals, especially if they have a claim, however tenuous, to your throne. The very people you rely on for advice and support are often the ones you must watch most closely. It's like being at a party where everyone is smiling, but you know at least half of them are secretly plotting to steal your dessert. The stakes, of course, are incredibly high. A misstep in court politics can lead to a loss of influence, a rebellion, or even an attempted coup. You hear whispers of plots, of secret gatherings in darkened corners of the castle, of coded messages sent via trusted messengers. Sometimes, these are just idle rumors, designed to sow discord. Other times, they are genuine threats, requiring swift and brutal action. You must decide who to believe, when to act, and how to deal with suspected traitors, all while maintaining the delicate balance of power that keeps your realm from descending into chaos. Historians still debate the true extent to which a medieval monarch was genuinely autonomous, or merely a figurehead swayed by the strongest or most cunning factions within their own court. Were you truly the master of your destiny, or were you constantly reacting to the intricate dance of power around you? It's a fascinating question, and one you grapple with daily. You might issue a decree, only to find it subtly undermined by a powerful noble who controls the local sheriff, or quietly ignored by a bishop who wields more spiritual authority than you do temporal. Even something as simple as choosing a hunting party or inviting guests to a feast becomes a political act. Who sits next to you? Who is granted the honor of serving you wine? These seemingly trivial details are meticulously observed by every courtier, interpreted as signs of your favor or displeasure. If you spend too much time speaking with one faction, the others will notice, and their distrust will fester. You are always performing, always calculating, always aware that every glance, every gesture, every casual remark is being analyzed for hidden meaning. And then there are the gifts. Oh, the gifts! Elaborate jewels, magnificent horses, rare furs, exotic spices, even entire estates. These are not just tokens of generosity. They are investments, bids for your attention and affection. Accepting a gift from one noble might offend another. Refusing one might be seen as a slight. It's a delicate dance, a never-ending exchange of favors and obligations, where the true value isn't in the item itself, but in the power dynamic it represents. It's like being perpetually trapped in a very expensive, high-stakes Secret Santa exchange, where everyone knows who you picked, and if you don't like their gift, there could be dire consequences. Ultimately, your life as a medieval royal, particularly within the confines of your own court, is a masterclass in human psychology and political maneuvering. You learn to trust your instincts, to spot a lie in a sea of flattery, and to understand that loyalty, like fine wine, is a rare and precious commodity, often diluted by ambition. The whispers never truly cease, the plotting never entirely ends, and the dance for power continues, long after you have retired to your bedchamber, the flickering candlelight casting long, shifting shadows that seem to mirror the ever-present intrigue. Sleep, when it comes, is often a restless affair, punctuated by the faint echoes of ambition still swirling in the air. You wake with the chill of dawn already seeping through the heavy tapestries of your bedchamber, a chill that seems to cling to your very bones, not just from the stone walls but from the weight of your crown. Yesterday, it was the clatter of steel and the roar of the hunt. Today, it's the solemn toll of the great bell from the cathedral, calling you, as it calls everyone, to prayer. In this age, your life, your power, your very existence is inextricably woven into the fabric of faith. You are not merely a king by conquest or inheritance. You are a king by divine right. This isn't just a fancy phrase for your royal PR team. It's the bedrock of your authority, a concept as solid and unyielding as the cathedral's foundations. God, so the priests tell you, chose you. He placed that crown upon your head, not your father, not your nobles, not even the people you rule. This singular belief elevates you above all others, making you a sacred figure, almost a living saint in the eyes of many. It means your word carries the weight of divine will. Your laws are reflections of God's order, and your very person is imbued with a special grace. It's a pretty sweet deal, honestly, if you can keep up the pious act. Every morning, you participate in Mass, often in your private chapel, the air thick with the scent of frankincense and the low murmur of Latin chants. You kneel on cold stone, your heavy robes rustling, as the priest elevates the host, transubstantiating bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. This isn't just a ritual. It's a profound, daily reaffirmation of your place in the universe, a constant reminder that you are but a servant of a higher power, even as you wield immense power yourself. You confess your sins, your impatience, your occasional lustful thoughts, perhaps that time you secretly wished your cousin would trip and fall off his horse during the joust, to a confessor who holds a surprising amount of sway over your conscience. He's often a trusted advisor, too, blurring the lines between spiritual guidance and political counsel. Imagine your modern-day therapist also having direct access to God and the power to condemn you to hell. It adds a certain urgency to the sessions. Your coronation itself was the ultimate demonstration of this divine right. You remember the overwhelming sensory experience. The vast, echoing nave of the cathedral, packed with nobles and clergy. The shimmering light filtering through stained glass windows depicting saints and biblical scenes. The deep, resonant chanting of the choir. You knelt before the archbishop, the most powerful spiritual figure in your kingdom, as he anointed you with holy oil, specially consecrated and believed to be from the very flask used to anoint biblical kings. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture. It was a sacrament transforming you, setting you apart. You became Christ's anointed, a truly unique individual. After the anointing, the crown was placed upon your head, not by your own hand, but by the Church, signifying that your power flowed through them, from God. This mainstream historical fact, the pivotal role of the Church in legitimizing medieval monarchs through the coronation ritual, underscores just how intertwined spiritual and temporal power truly were. Without that anointing, that blessing, your claim to the throne would feel hollow even to yourself. The church, in this era, is not just a spiritual guide. It is a colossal temporal power. Bishops and abbots are major landholders, commanding vast estates and armies of their own. They sit on your royal council, advise you on matters of state, and sometimes even challenge your authority. The Pope, far away in Rome, is a figure of immense, sometimes terrifying, influence. He can excommunicate you, cutting you off from the sacraments and, in the eyes of many, condemning your soul to eternal damnation. He can place your entire kingdom under interdict, meaning no baptisms, no marriages, no last rites, essentially, a spiritual lockdown that could spark widespread rebellion among your terrified populace. You've seen how quickly a king's power can crumble when the Pope turns his wrath upon him. The memory of Emperor Henry IV humbling himself before Pope Gregory VII at Canossa in the snow, begging for forgiveness, serves as a stark warning. You certainly don't fancy spending 3 days shivering outside a castle, even if it is for divine absolution. Beyond the grand politics, the Church permeates every aspect of daily life, from the cradle to the grave. You are baptized as an infant, married in the Church, and will ultimately be buried with Christian rites. Every feast day, every fast, every major decision, whether to declare war, to travel, to hold court, is prefaced with prayers, blessings, or consultations with religious advisors. The ringing of church bells dictates the rhythm of the day, marking hours for prayer and work. Monasteries are centers of learning, preserving ancient texts and educating the few who are literate. They also serve as hospitals, inns, and almshouses, providing what little social safety net exists. If you're ever feeling peckish on a journey, a quick stop at a monastery can usually guarantee you a decent, if simple, meal and a safe bed for the night, all thanks to the monks' vows of hospitality. Just try not to interrupt their vespers. The spiritual beliefs of the era are deeply, profoundly held. The fear of damnation is palpable. Hell is not a metaphor. It is a terrifying, fiery reality. Purgatory offers a glimmer of hope, a place where souls can be cleansed before ascending to heaven, but it's still a painful, arduous journey. You contribute generously to churches and monasteries, not just for show, but out of genuine concern for your soul and the souls of your ancestors. You commission elaborate altarpieces, donate precious relics, and fund crusades, all in the hopes of accruing spiritual merit. Indulgences, those certificates promising a reduction of time in purgatory for a monetary donation, become increasingly common later in the medieval period, a sort of spiritual express lane, if you will, though historians still argue whether the common people truly understood them as a get-out-of-jail-free card or as a genuine act of penance and charity. Relics are a particularly fascinating and sometimes bizarre aspect of this fervent faith. Every church, every chapel, every royal treasury seems to house a collection of them. A piece of the true cross, a bone from a saint, a vial of holy water, even a fragment of the Virgin Mary's veil. These aren't just curiosities. They are believed to possess immense spiritual power, capable of healing the sick, warding off evil, and granting miracles. You yourself possess several prized relics, displayed prominently in your private chapel, and you might even carry a small, encased fragment of a saint's bone with you into battle, believing it will offer divine protection. One quirky or fringe tidbit of the era is the widespread belief in the king's touch. It was thought that, as an anointed monarch, you possessed a miraculous ability to heal scrofula, a lymphatic disease also known as the king's evil, simply by touching the afflicted person. Imagine the queue outside your palace. It's a powerful symbol of your divine connection, even if the actual medical efficacy was, shall we say, debatable. You probably just hoped the placebo effect was strong that day. Your relationship with the church is complex. On one hand, you rely on it for legitimacy, for moral guidance, and for the spiritual well-being of your kingdom. On the other hand, you often find yourself in conflict with its immense power. You might squabble over who appoints bishops for you because they are your vassals and landholders, or the Pope because they are spiritual leaders. You might chafe under the Church's moral pronouncements, especially when they interfere with your political ambitions or personal desires. Perhaps you want to divorce your queen for a more advantageous alliance, but the church forbids it. Or you need to raise taxes on church lands to fund a war, but the clergy cries foul. It's a delicate dance, a constant negotiation between temporal authority and spiritual supremacy. You need the church, but you also need to control it or at least manage it effectively. Pilgrimages are a significant part of the religious landscape, and you, as a pious or at least outwardly pious monarch, undertake them occasionally. Journeys to Canterbury, Rome, or even the Holy Land are arduous and dangerous, but they offer immense spiritual merit and public display of your devotion. Imagine trudging for weeks or months, perhaps even years, to reach a holy site, enduring discomfort and peril, all for the sake of your soul. It's a far cry from booking a package holiday to a spiritual retreat. Even in warfare, the church casts a long shadow. Crusades, those massive military expeditions to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control, are preached by the Pope himself. You might lead one, or send your knights, believing it to be a holy war, a righteous endeavor that guarantees salvation for those who die in battle. The banners you carry often bear crosses, and your knights wear the cross on their tunics. Priests accompany your armies, offering blessings, hearing confessions, and performing last rites on the battlefield. It's a stark reminder that even the most brutal aspects of medieval life are framed within a deeply religious context. Ultimately, your faith, whether it stems from genuine piety or shrewd political calculation, is an inescapable force. It shapes your laws, dictates your daily routine, influences your decisions, and underpins your very authority. You are a king, yes, but you are also a son of the church, and in the grand cosmic scheme of the medieval mind, that latter identity holds an even greater eternal weight. So, you continue to kneel, you continue to pray, and you continue to navigate the intricate, often contradictory, demands of your earthly crown and your eternal soul. It's a balancing act, and the stakes are, quite literally, heaven or hell. Now, as your royal life unfolds, you also become the very embodiment of the law. This isn't just about making rules. It's about being the ultimate judge, jury, and executioner, all rolled into one velvet-clad package. Welcome to the often bewildering, frequently brutal, and undeniably inconsistent world of medieval justice. Your royal prerogative, that almost mystical right to exercise power without specific legal authorization, truly shines here. It means that while there are customs and burgeoning laws, your word, your mood, your whim can ultimately sway the scales. Imagine sitting on a rough-hewn wooden throne, perhaps in the great hall of one of your castles, or even under an oak tree on a royal progress, listening to a dispute. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth and unwashed bodies, a stark contrast to the perfumed chambers you usually inhabit. A peasant stands before you, accused of stealing a pig, a capital offense in some places, believe it or not. His fate, quite literally, rests in your hands, or rather on your ability to interpret vague custom and the pleas of his lord. There are no fancy law degrees for the judges here, no long rows of leather-bound tomes. Justice is often dispensed by local lords, by your itinerant justices who travel the shires, and ultimately by you. It's less about precedent and more about, well, whatever seems right to you at the moment, tempered by the advice of your often self-serving counsel. The very concept of law in your time is a tangled web, like a forgotten tapestry pulled from a dusty chest. You have ancient customary laws, varying wildly from village to village, duchy to duchy. Then there's the growing influence of Roman law, rediscovered and championed by scholars in universities, offering a more systematic approach. And, of course, the ever-present canon law of the Church, which governs everything from marriage to heresy. These different legal systems often bump into each other, creating jurisdictional headaches that would make a modern lawyer weep into their expensive coffee. You, as king, are the ultimate arbiter, the one who tries to make sense of the chaos or, more often, uses the chaos to your advantage. Consider the methods for determining guilt. Forget DNA evidence or forensic analysis. Your era prefers a more divine approach. Trial by ordeal is still very much a thing, though it's slowly fading in some parts of your realm as the Church begins to express doubts. Picture this. Someone accused of a crime might be forced to plunge their hand into boiling water or carry a red-hot iron for a certain distance. If, after 3 days, the wound is healing cleanly, God has deemed them innocent. If not, well, then they're guilty. It's a simple system, really, if you believe in direct divine intervention for every petty theft. And if you don't, it's a terrifying lottery. Another option is trial by combat. 2 parties or their champions fight it out. The victor is deemed to have God on their side, and thus to be in the right. It makes for excellent spectator sport, no doubt, but perhaps less reliable as a true measure of justice. Imagine the legal fees for that kind of representation. My champion is trained in broadsword and axe, and charges extra for dismemberment. Your royal courts are where the most serious crimes are heard, especially those that threaten your authority. Treason, for instance, is the gravest offense, a direct attack on your divine right to rule. If you're found guilty of treason, the punishment is designed not just to end your life, but to utterly obliterate your dignity and serve as a chilling warning. Hanging, drawing, and quartering awaits male traitors, a gruesome public spectacle involving being dragged, hanged until nearly dead, disemboweled while still alive, and then dismembered. For noblemen, a swift beheading might be granted as a mercy, a testament to their status even in disgrace. For women, burning at the stake is often the fate for treason. As the idea of drawing and quartering, a woman was seen as unchivalrous, which is a truly bizarre standard of medieval politeness. But it's not just the severity of the punishments that's striking. It's the sheer inconsistency. Your justice system is a social hierarchy in action. A commoner who steals a loaf of bread might lose a hand, or even their life, if they're a repeat offender. A nobleman who commits murder might get off with a hefty fine, a period of exile, or a pilgrimage, especially if they have powerful connections or are useful to you. After all, you need your powerful lords to help you rule, and executing them willy-nilly tends to upset the delicate balance of power. It's a grim truth. The higher your status, the more likely you are to escape the harshest penalties. It's like a medieval get-out-of-jail-free card. But instead of a card, it's your family name and a lot of land. Mainstream historical fact. It was under English monarchs like Henry II that the foundations of common law began to truly solidify, with royal courts applying consistent legal principles across the realm, gradually superseding localized customs and diminishing the role of trial by ordeal. This move towards a more centralized and standardized legal system, while still far from modern ideals, was a huge step for the era. But even with these developments, the king's personal influence remained paramount. Your personal involvement in justice can be both a blessing and a curse. You can grant pardons, commute sentences, or even overrule a local court's decision. This power is often used to reward loyalty, punish enemies, or even just to show mercy on a whim. Imagine you're riding through a village and a desperate mother throws herself at your feet, begging for her son's life, who was condemned for poaching. You could, in that moment, decide to pardon him, earning the undying loyalty of that family and perhaps a few good stories about your benevolence. Or you could let the sentence stand, demonstrating that the law is the law, even if it's a harsh one. It's a constant tightrope walk between appearing just and appearing strong. Then there are the more unusual cases. A quirky tidbit from medieval legal history is the phenomenon of animal trials. Yes, you heard that right. Animals, from pigs to rats to even insects, could be put on trial for crimes like murder or damaging crops. These trials were often conducted with all the solemnity of human proceedings, complete with lawyers for both sides. If found guilty, the animal could be executed, exiled, or even excommunicated by the church. Imagine the legal arguments. Your Honor, my client, a sow, pleads not guilty to the charge of infanticide. She was merely acting on natural instinct. It truly shows the medieval mind's unique blend of piety, superstition, and a very literal interpretation of dominion over creation. The financial aspect of justice is also significant. Fines are a major source of revenue for you and your lords. Every conviction, every broken oath, every minor trespass can result in a payment to the crown or the local lord. It's a system where justice isn't just about upholding order. It's about filling the royal coffers. This creates a perverse incentive to find people guilty, especially those with some wealth to extract. Your sheriffs and bailiffs, who are responsible for collecting these fines, might not always be the most scrupulous individuals. It's a bit like a medieval parking ticket system, but instead of just a fine, you might lose an ear. The arbitrary nature of justice also extends to who gets to be heard. If you're a powerful lord, you have direct access to your king, you can make your case, use your influence. If you're a humble peasant, you rely on your local lord, who might or might not champion your cause, or you might never even get a chance to appeal to a higher court. This lack of universal access to justice is a hallmark of the era. Historians still argue whether the medieval legal system, despite its brutality and inconsistencies, was fundamentally effective in maintaining social order. Some argue that the fear of harsh punishment, combined with the moral authority of the church, kept crime rates relatively low. Others point to the constant unrest, the widespread banditry, and the frequent feuds between nobles as evidence of its limitations. Was it a system designed for justice or simply for control? The answer likely lies somewhere in the murky middle, like a poorly lit medieval dungeon. As you navigate this complex landscape, remember that every judgment you make, every pardon you grant, every execution you order, shapes your reputation. Will you be remembered as the just, a king who brought order and fairness to his realm, even within the confines of medieval norms? Or will you be the cruel, a monarch whose arbitrary decisions bred fear and resentment? The echo of your justice, or lack thereof, will reverberate through the chronicles, long after the last clang of the dungeon door. As a medieval monarch, your life, as we've seen, is a tapestry woven with peculiar threads of etiquette, superstition, and discomfort. But none of these threads feel quite as thick, quite as heavy, as the expectation that you, as king, will lead your armies into battle. This isn't some abstract concept you delegate to a general. This is your duty, your very identity tied to the clang of steel and the roar of men. You are not just a ruler. You are, by divine right and popular demand, a warrior king. Imagine the summons. Not a polite invitation to a garden party, but the urgent call to arms. Your realm is threatened, a rival king has encroached, or perhaps you have decided it's time to expand your territories. The decision to go to war, while often debated in hushed tones within your council chamber, ultimately rests on your shoulders. And once that decision is made, the gears of medieval warfare begin to grind, slowly, painstakingly. First, the muster. Messengers gallop across the land, bearing your royal writ, demanding that your feudal lords bring their levies. You don't have a standing army in the modern sense, not really. Instead, you rely on the loyalty of your barons, who in turn rely on their knights, who in turn rely on their peasants. It's a vast, sprawling, and frankly, rather inefficient system. You watch as men, some eager, many less so, trickle into the designated mustering point. They come with their own meager supplies, their own weapons, their own fears. The air quickly becomes thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, damp wool, and nervous horses. It's a sensory overload, a far cry from the perfumed halls of your palace, and it's just the beginning. Then the march. Your royal retinue, once a symbol of opulence, now transforms into a mobile command center. Your grand tents, once for lavish banquets, now serve as strategic war rooms. You ride at the head of your column, perhaps on a magnificent destrier, its hooves churning the mud. The sheer logistics are mind-boggling, even by modern standards. How do you feed thousands of men and horses for weeks, even months, on the road? The answer often is you don't. You forage, you pillage, you rely on the land, leaving a trail of hungry, sometimes hostile peasants in your wake. The roads are not paved highways. They are muddy tracks, often impassable. Rain turns them into quagmires. Dust chokes you in dry spells. The constant movement, the cold nights, the damp mornings, it's an endurance test for everyone, including you. It makes you wonder if medieval kings ever secretly longed for a good, solid GPS and a decent catering company. Just a quiet thought, of course. As you draw closer to the enemy, the atmosphere shifts. The casual chatter gives way to a tense quiet. You start to don your armor, a process that is less about individual heroism and more about team effort. This isn't like slipping on a jacket. It's a full-body encasement. Piece by piece, your squires, young men often training to be knights themselves, help you. They strap on the greaves to protect your shins, the cuisses for your thighs, the breastplate, the gauntlets. The weight is immense, easily 50 to 60 pounds of steel, sometimes more. Every movement becomes deliberate, slow. You clank as you walk, a metallic symphony of impending doom. It's hot inside and surprisingly noisy. You hear your own breathing amplified, the squeak of leather, the subtle rub of metal on metal. It's a bit like wearing a very heavy, very unventilated, and quite expensive tin can. This heavy shell, this clanking suit of armor, is a physical manifestation of the concept of chivalry. On the surface, medieval warfare is romanticized, isn't it? We hear tales of valiant knights, shining armor, codes of honor, and noble deeds. The ideal of chivalry, propagated by poets and troubadours, spoke of courage, loyalty, piety, and the protection of the weak. A true knight, and especially a king, was expected to uphold these virtues, to fight fairly, to show mercy to a vanquished foe, and to always put God and honor first. You might even participate in a tournament before the real war, a grand display of skill and pageantry, a controlled environment where the ideals of chivalry could be practiced and celebrated without the messy reality of actual death. But then, you ride onto the battlefield, and the romantic ideals collide head-on with brutal reality. The smell hits you first: sweat, fear, horse dung, and the metallic tang that you soon realize is blood. The sounds are overwhelming. The thud of hooves as cavalry charges, the screams of men, the clang of steel on steel, the terrifying thrum of thousands of arrows blotting out the sun. Your vision is often limited by your helmet, the world reduced to a narrow slit. You can barely hear your own thoughts over the din. Your role as king is to lead from the front, to inspire your men. You are a visible symbol of your kingdom's might, your banner flying high. But being at the front also means you are a prime target. Arrows, bolts from crossbows, and even rocks launched from slings fly through the air like a deadly swarm of insects. The famed English longbow, a mainstream historical fact of devastating effectiveness, could pierce armor at range, unleashing a torrent of death upon tightly packed formations. You see men fall, not in cinematic slow motion, but abruptly, collapsing into the mud. Close-quarters combat is a terrifying, chaotic melee. You swing your sword or your mace, not with elegant flourishes, but with brute force, aiming for weak points in armor, for unprotected limbs. It's exhausting, terrifying work. The ground beneath your feet becomes slick with mud and blood. You see the fear in the eyes of your enemies, and likely, the same fear reflected in your own men. There's little room for the niceties of chivalry when survival is paramount. Mercy is a luxury few can afford in the heat of battle. If you're unhorsed, that heavy armor that protects you becomes a dangerous burden. You can't simply get back up. You need your squires to help you, to lift you, to pull you out of the fray before you're trampled or captured. This reliance on squires, often young boys, highlights the peculiar vulnerability that came with such heavy protection. And then there are the sieges. Not every war is a grand, pitched battle. Many are long, drawn-out affairs, where you lay siege to an enemy castle or city. This is a different kind of brutal. It's less about the adrenaline of direct combat and more about endurance, starvation, and disease. You camp outside the walls for weeks, months, sometimes even years. The trebuchets hurl massive stones, trying to breach the walls. Sappers dig tunnels underneath, hoping to collapse foundations. The besieged defenders face starvation and thirst, while your own men suffer from exposure, boredom, and rampant disease. Dysentery, typhoid, and other illnesses often claimed more lives than the actual fighting. It's a war of attrition, a test of wills, and it can be incredibly tedious. You'd probably spend hours just watching rocks fly, thinking, is this what being a king is all about? When the battle is done, whether in victory or defeat, the aftermath is grim. The field is littered with the dead and the dying. The sounds of battle fade, replaced by the moans of the wounded. Medieval medicine, as you've already experienced, is rudimentary at best, and on a battlefield it's virtually non-existent. Wounds fester, infection is rampant, and many who survive the initial clash succumb days later. You might ride among the fallen, identifying your own men, perhaps ordering the collection of the enemy dead for burial, or simply leaving them to the scavengers. The air hangs heavy with the stench of death. Despite the romanticized ideals, the brutal realities of medieval warfare often overshadowed any noble aspirations. Capture, rather than death, might be the aim for a high-ranking noble, as they could be ransomed for vast sums, a peculiar medieval form of financial leverage. But for the common soldier, for the peasant levy, there was rarely such a luxury. They were often butchered without quarter, their villages plundered. Historians still debate the true extent to which the code of chivalry was actually followed in practice, or if it was more of an ideal, a set of virtues to aspire to rather than a strict rulebook for the chaotic realities of war. Was it truly about honor, or was it simply a convenient narrative to justify violence and maintain social order among the warrior class? As king, you carry the weight of these decisions, the lives lost, the lands ravaged. You are expected to be brave, decisive, and victorious. Your personal courage is paramount, not just for inspiring your troops, but for maintaining your legitimacy. A king who shirks from battle, who shows cowardice, risks not only his reputation but his very throne. You are a living standard, a rallying point. The expectations are immense, the risks even greater. It's a strange dichotomy. The divine right to rule, yet the very real possibility of dying, ingloriously, in a muddy field, far from the comfort of your gilded bedchamber. This is the king's duty, a brutal, often thankless, and utterly essential part of your weird medieval life. You've navigated the treacherous waters of court intrigue, endured the brutal realities of war, and even wrestled with the shadowy influence of superstition. But there's one final, inevitable chapter in this weird royal life of yours. The very end of it. The moment your regal breath finally ceases, and the crown, for however brief a moment, hangs suspended in the air. Because even a monarch, despite all the divine right and earthly power, is merely mortal. And in the medieval world, a royal death wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a seismic event that could shake kingdoms to their very foundations. Imagine the scene. Your breath growing shallow, the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows on the tapestries of your bedchamber, the hushed whispers of your physicians, their faces grim, their concoctions finally failing. Perhaps a priest is murmuring last rites, the scent of incense mingling with the heavy air. The moment you finally slip away is often kept quiet at first, a sacred, awful secret guarded by those most loyal. But the news travels fast, carried on hushed tones through the palace, then bursting forth into the wider world. The king is dead, is immediately followed by the cry that echoes through the centuries. Long live the king, a proclamation of continuity, a desperate plea for stability in a world always teetering on the edge of chaos. What happens next to your mortal remains is, well, peculiar. Unlike a commoner, whose body might be quickly wrapped and buried, yours is a sacred vessel, imbued with the divine spark of kingship. The first priority is often to preserve the body, to allow for public viewing and a lengthy funeral procession. Embalming, though rudimentary by modern standards, was practiced. Your internal organs might be removed and placed in a separate casket, often buried in a different location, a practice known as heart burial or viscera burial. It was believed that this allowed for more sacred distribution, or perhaps just made the main body easier to transport and preserve. Imagine the medieval embalmers, working with salt, spices, and fragrant oils, trying desperately to combat the inevitable. It must have been quite the job, especially if you'd had a particularly rich last meal. You can almost smell the cloves and frankincense, trying to mask something far less pleasant. Once prepared, your body would often lie in state, sometimes for days, even weeks. If the journey to your final resting place was long, or if the decay was too advanced, a lifelike effigy might be created, dressed in your royal robes, complete with a crown. This effigy would then be carried on your funeral bier, serving as a powerful visual representation of the enduring monarchy, even as your actual body was safely encased. It's a bit like a medieval action figure, but for the most serious of occasions. Then comes the funeral procession, a spectacle designed to impress and reaffirm authority even in death. This wasn't just a simple journey to the grave. It was a grand, solemn parade, often stretching for miles. Your coffin, draped in rich cloths, would be carried by your highest nobles, flanked by knights, priests, and an endless stream of mourners, both genuine and obligatory. The route would be lined with your subjects, weeping, praying, or simply watching in awestruck silence. It was a final, powerful display of your sovereignty, an opportunity for your people to grieve and to witness the transfer of power. The sheer scale of these events could be mind-boggling, a testament to the immense significance of a monarch's passing. Think of the logistics, feeding all those people, housing them, managing the crowds. It makes planning a modern-day state funeral look like a quick trip to the grocery store. Your final resting place would often be a grand cathedral or an abbey, a sacred space where you could join generations of your ancestors. For English monarchs, Westminster Abbey became a prominent choice, a hallowed ground for kings and queens. In France, the Basilica of Saint Denis served a similar purpose for many of their rulers. Here, elaborate tombs would be constructed, often adorned with effigies of you in repose, surrounded by symbols of your power and piety. The burial rites were long and complex, a blend of Christian ceremony and ancient customs, all designed to ensure the peaceful repose of your soul and the smooth transition of power. But the real drama, the true peril, often began the moment your last breath escaped. Succession. This was the beating heart, or rather the fragile Achilles heel, of every medieval dynasty. The ideal was simple: primogeniture, the eldest legitimate son inherits the throne. It was meant to be a clear, unambiguous line of descent, designed to prevent conflict. And when it worked, it was a beautiful thing. The new king, often already trained for the role, could step seamlessly into your shoes, oaths of fealty would be sworn, and the kingdom would exhale a collective sigh of relief. However, medieval life was rarely so accommodating. What if you had no sons? What if your only son was a minor, a mere child too young to rule? This scenario immediately plunged the kingdom into the treacherous waters of a regency. A council of powerful nobles, often your own relatives, would be appointed to govern in the young king's name. And while some regents were truly dedicated to the welfare of the realm and the education of their charge, others saw it as an unparalleled opportunity for self-enrichment and power grabs. Historians still argue whether these regency councils were truly acting in the best interest of the young monarch or if they were primarily driven by their own political ambitions. The court would become a viper's nest of intrigue, as factions vied for influence over the child king and the levers of power. And then there were the truly nightmarish scenarios: multiple claimants, perhaps a powerful noble with a distant but plausible claim to the throne, or a rival branch of the royal family, or, most terrifyingly, a daughter in a kingdom where women were generally barred from ruling, sparking a civil war known as an anarchy, as happened in England after Henry I's death. These disputes could erupt into devastating civil wars, tearing the kingdom apart, as nobles chose sides, armies clashed, and the very fabric of society unraveled. The Wars of the Roses in England are a prime example, a decades-long struggle between two branches of the same family over the rightful claim to the throne. It really makes you appreciate the simplicity of a modern-day election, even with all its drama. The urgency to crown a new monarch was paramount. A kingdom without a clear, recognized ruler was a kingdom vulnerable. Foreign powers might seize the opportunity to invade, internal rebellions could erupt, and the delicate balance of power among the nobility could shatter. So, as soon as the mourning period allowed, and often even before, the new monarch would undergo their coronation. This wasn't just a fancy ceremony. It was a sacred ritual, a divine anointing. The archbishop would place the crown on their head, symbolizing God's blessing and legitimacy. Oaths would be sworn, fealty pledged, and the new reign would officially begin. It's almost as if everyone was just desperate to get that crown on someone's head as quickly as possible. just to make sure the kingdom didn't spontaneously combust. The fragility of medieval dynasties was a constant source of anxiety for any ruling monarch. You, as king or queen, would have spent your entire life acutely aware of the need to produce heirs, preferably strong, healthy sons. Every illness of your children, every miscarriage, every potential marriage alliance, was viewed through the lens of succession. Your legacy, the very continuation of your family's power, depended entirely on this delicate biological and political balancing act. It's ironic, isn't it? All that power, all that wealth, all that divine right, and yet the continuity of your entire dynasty could hinge on something as simple as a healthy male heir. If only they'd had a family tree app back then, it might have saved a lot of headaches and perhaps a few wars. So, as your royal life draws to a close, you understand that your death is not merely an end, but a catalyst. It's the ultimate test of the stability you've built, the alliances you've forged, and the legitimacy of your lineage. The rituals surrounding your passing are designed to manage this transition, to assert continuity, and to guide your soul to the afterlife. But the struggle for succession, the perilous dance of power that follows, is the true legacy of your final moments, shaping the future of the kingdom you leave behind. As the velvet drapes settle around your grand bedchamber, shutting out the pre-dawn chill, you might find yourself instinctively touching the small, carved wooden amulet hidden beneath your tunic. It's a simple thing, blessed by a local wise woman, meant to ward off the ague that sweeps through the castle every autumn. In your world, the line between the tangible and the unseen is gossamer thin, almost imperceptible. Every rustle of leaves, every unusual bird call, every dream that lingers upon waking, they all hold potential meaning, whispers from a realm just beyond the reach of your five senses. You live under a vast, ever-present canopy of superstition, where omens and beliefs are not quaint folk tales, but deeply ingrained truths that shape your very existence, from the mundane rituals of your mourning to the weighty decisions of your reign. Your personal astrologer is a permanent fixture in your court, a figure of immense influence, often more trusted than your most seasoned military commander. He isn't just a quirky addition, he's an essential advisor. Each morning, before you even consider the day's agenda, he might present you with a new chart, intricately drawn on parchment, constellations swirling in ink, predicting the auspicious hours for council meetings, or warning against signing a treaty when Mercury is in retrograde. Think of it as your medieval weather app, but for your entire life, and with far more dire consequences if you ignore its predictions. You might chuckle, a soft, sleepy sound, at the thought that your astrologer probably has more job security than your chief cook, especially if the stars predict a good harvest. He pores over these celestial maps, his fingers tracing lines that connect distant stars to your earthly fate, advising you on the best dates for your coronation, for a royal marriage, or even for embarking on a journey. Should you launch a campaign against a troublesome duke? Consult the stars. Is this a good month to try for an heir? The planets will tell. This isn't just about cosmic curiosity. It's about practical, daily governance, filtered through the lens of ancient astrological wisdom. Beyond the formal charts, the air itself seems thick with prophecy. Not just from your resident astrologer, but from traveling mystics, holy fools who speak in riddles, or even from the sermons of particularly zealous priests. A whispered prophecy from a gaunt hermit, eyes burning with feverish conviction, speaking of a great plague yet to come, or a vision of your kingdom's future glory, can send shivers down your spine and influence your immediate actions. You might find yourself commissioning extra prayers, or even delaying a planned journey, simply because an old crone in the market square foretold ill fortune. The Church, while condemning outright witchcraft and heresy, often walks a fine line, accepting divine inspiration and prophetic dreams when they align with its narrative, but swiftly denouncing anything that smacks of paganism or challenges its authority. It's a tricky balance, navigating the fine line between God's will and the devil's deception. Folk magic, too, permeates your life, often blending seamlessly with accepted religious practice. The scent of burning herbs often wafts through the palace corridors, not just for fragrance, but to ward off unseen spirits or cleanse the air of sickness. You might carry a small pouch of dried herbs, perhaps mugwort or vervain, believed to protect against evil or bring good luck. Illness isn't just a physical ailment. It's often seen as the result of a curse, an evil eye, or the malicious work of mischievous spirits. Healers, beyond the academic physicians, might employ charms, incantations, and rituals alongside their herbal remedies. If you suffer from a persistent cough, it might be attributed to a sprite dwelling in your throat, requiring a specific prayer recited under a full moon, rather than just a simple decoction of horehound. Omens are everywhere, demanding your attention. A raven cawing 3 times from your battlements might be interpreted as a sign of impending death or disaster. A particularly vivid dream, perhaps of a white stag leading you through a dark forest, could be seen as a divine message guiding your next political move. Dropping a valuable chalice might be a precursor to a family tragedy. You learn to interpret these signs, to be constantly vigilant for the subtle nudges and warnings the universe seems to send. It's an exhausting mental burden, constantly sifting through everyday occurrences for hidden meanings. You might even find yourself crossing your fingers behind your back while signing a treaty, just in case the ink blot was a bad omen. Forget your lucky socks. You're probably carrying a dried toad's foot, just in case. One of the most remarkable examples of this pervasive belief system, and one that directly impacts you as monarch, is the belief in the king's evil. This is a mainstream historical fact. For centuries, it was widely believed that the touch of an anointed monarch could cure scrofula, a stubborn, unsightly swelling of the lymph nodes, often in the neck. The ritual, known as touching for the king's evil, is a poignant display of the intersection of divine right, folk belief, and royal authority. You, the anointed monarch, are believed to possess the divine touch. Imagine the scene. A line of the afflicted, often poor and desperate, waiting patiently in your presence. You would gently touch their swollen glands, perhaps making the sign of the cross, and then bestow upon them a special gold coin, often pierced, which they would wear as an amulet. It's a powerful, almost mystical act, reinforcing your divine connection and your role as a healer for your people. It's a quirky or fringe tidbit in the grand scheme of royal duties, yet for centuries, it was a very real, very public expression of your perceived supernatural power. The hope in their eyes, the quiet reverence as you perform this ancient ritual, is a palpable force. This deep immersion in the supernatural isn't just about personal comfort or fear. It profoundly shapes your decisions as a ruler. Before embarking on a major military campaign, your astrologers would calculate the most propitious moment for the first march. If the omens were bad, perhaps a comet appeared in the sky, or a flock of birds flew in an inauspicious pattern, the entire campaign might be delayed or even called off. The fear of divine displeasure or cosmic misalignment is a powerful deterrent. Treaties are signed, alliances forged, and laws decreed only after careful consideration of the celestial forecast or the interpretation of a significant dream. You are not just a political leader. You are also a diviner, constantly seeking signs and portents in a world brimming with invisible forces. The Church, as mentioned, often had a complex relationship with these beliefs. While condemning practices it deemed pagan or heretical, it also embraced miracles, relics, and the power of prayer to influence events. Pilgrimages to holy sites, the veneration of saints' bones, and the belief in divine intervention through prayer were all integral parts of your life, blending seamlessly with the more superstitious elements. It's a testament to the era's holistic worldview, where the sacred and the profane, the natural and the supernatural, were not distinct categories but intertwined aspects of a single, complex reality. Grappling with this pervasive influence is a constant mental exercise. Is that sudden illness a natural affliction, or the result of a rival's dark magic? Is that unexpected victory on the battlefield due to your strategic genius, or the benevolent intervention of a patron saint? Every success is a blessing, every failure a potential sign of divine wrath or demonic interference. The weight of these beliefs presses down on you, adding another layer of complexity to already difficult decisions. You are constantly seeking reassurance, constantly interpreting, constantly trying to appease forces that are both mighty and invisible. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were genuine spiritual convictions for medieval royalty, or primarily tools for political manipulation and control? Was the king's evil ritual a sincere act of faith, or a clever way to solidify popular support and reinforce the divine right to rule? Perhaps it was both. For you, the monarch living within this shadow, the distinction is often blurred. You are a product of your time, deeply embedded in its worldview, and the superstitions that swirl around you are as real as the crown upon your head. They are part of the very fabric of your being, influencing every breath you take, every decision you make, every step you take in your weird, royal life. The final curtain falls, not on a stage, but on the grand, often grimy, theater of your life. You are no longer just a person, you are a legacy. And what a peculiar legacy it is, woven from the threads of strange customs, arbitrary power, and a world utterly unlike our own. Think back to your birth, swaddled in rough linen, perhaps even in the presence of curious onlookers, a public spectacle from day one. You were destined for the crown, not by choice, but by the sheer biological lottery of your lineage. This very beginning, so alien to modern sensibilities, immediately set the tone for your perceived destiny. Were you seen as a divine gift, a child of prophecy, or merely another mouth to feed, another pawn in the endless game of succession? Your very existence was a political statement, a living embodiment of the divine right you would later wield. If you were a strong, healthy child, it was an omen of good fortune. If sickly, perhaps a sign of ill favor. Imagine the whispers. Did you see how pale the young prince looked? A bad sign, surely, for the harvest. It's like a medieval Yelp review, but for your entire life. Then came the arranged marriage, a strategic chessboard move disguised as a wedding. Your spouse, perhaps a stranger from a distant land, brought not love, but alliances, land, and the promise of heirs. Your legacy, in part, hinged on this union. Did it bring peace? Did it secure borders? Did you produce a male heir? Oh, the pressure! If you failed to sire a son, despite all the medieval fertility treatments, which probably involved more prayer than actual medicine, and certainly no awkward conversations with a medieval doctor about sperm count, your reign could be viewed as a failure, a dead end for your dynasty. Conversely, a line of strapping sons meant stability, power, and a pat on the back from the chroniclers. He was a good king, they might write, for he made many babies. A simple metric, perhaps, but effective for legacy building. Your daily life in the palace, a labyrinth of unseen rituals and suffocating etiquette, also shaped your reputation. Were you accessible to your subjects, holding court with a patient ear, or were you an aloof figure hidden behind layers of tapestry and protocol? The way you ate, dressed, and even relieved yourself, let's not dwell too much on the communal latrines, shall we? Contributed to the image you projected. A king who feasted lavishly while his people starved might be remembered as a glutton, while one who observed fasts and gave alms might be revered as pious. It's almost like medieval PR, except instead of managing your Twitter feed, you're managing whether or not you're seen picking your teeth with a dagger. And those hygiene habits. While we now understand that disease spreads through germs, not bad humors, in your time, the lack of regular bathing and the omnipresent grime were simply facts of life. Did you stand out as particularly fragrant or malodorous? If you were known to be exceptionally clean, for a medieval royal it might have been seen as eccentric or even a sign of weakness. Look at the king, someone might whisper. He washes more than once a month. Is he trying to become a monk? Conversely, a king who embraced the mud and sweat of battle might have been seen as more manly and relatable, even if he smelled like a barn. Your encounters with medieval medicine, a bizarre blend of quacks, charms, and bloodletting, also played a part. Did you survive a plague that decimated your court? Were you seen as divinely protected, or simply lucky? A king who recovered from a grave illness might be seen as a testament to God's favor, while one who succumbed quickly might be viewed as less favored, or even cursed. Historians still argue whether the perceived health of a monarch truly influenced their political effectiveness or if it was merely a post hoc rationalization for success or failure. Was King John's perceived weakness due to his military failures, or did his chronic illnesses contribute to his perceived feebleness by his contemporaries? It's a chicken and egg situation for the history books. The constant royal progress, those exhausting journeys across your realm, were crucial for projecting power. Were you greeted with cheers or grumbles? Did your presence inspire loyalty or resentment due to the burden of feeding and housing your massive retinue? If you were seen, you were real. If you were never seen, you became a distant, almost mythical figure, harder to love, easier to resent. It's like a perpetual, very slow, and often muddy royal roadshow. You couldn't just tweet, "Hey peasants, I'm here. Bring me some ale." You had to actually be there, smelling the hay and the unwashed masses, and letting them smell you. Your feasts were legendary, not just for their extravagance, but for the sheer volume and often bizarre combinations of food. Peacocks redressed in their feathers, boars' heads, swans, all designed to impress. But did this opulence translate into respect, or did it fuel accusations of gluttony, especially during times of famine? Conversely, your adherence to religious fasts could elevate your piety in the eyes of the church and your devout subjects. Your plate told a story, whether you realized it or not. Fashion, oh medieval fashion, those layers of velvet, ermine, and gold, those ridiculous pointed shoes and cumbersome crowns. They were designed to scream, "I am important." But at what cost to your comfort? Your appearance was a walking billboard for your status. Did you wear your finery with gravitas? Or did you look like you were perpetually about to trip over your own overly long sleeves? A king who dressed impeccably, even if it meant needing 3 squires just to help him get ready for dinner, projected an image of control and wealth. A king whose clothes looked perpetually rumpled might have been seen as careless, or worse, poor. It's the medieval equivalent of showing up to a red carpet event in sweatpants. Princely pastimes, from hawking to jousting, weren't just fun and games. They were demonstrations of skill, bravery, and power. Did you excel in the tourney, breaking lances and impressing the ladies? Or were you clumsy, falling off your horse and becoming the subject of hushed jokes? Your prowess in these brutal entertainments could solidify your image as a strong, capable leader, or expose you as weak and unfit to rule. Imagine the memes if you kept losing at jousting. Sir Reginald the reliably unhorsed. Court intrigue, that viper's nest of whispers and backstabbing, was a constant threat. Your ability to navigate this treacherous landscape, to discern loyalty from betrayal, was paramount to your survival and your reputation. Were you a shrewd politician, playing your nobles against each other? Or were you easily manipulated, a puppet king? The stories of your court, the rise and fall of favorites, the accusations of treason, these were the daily dramas that shaped public perception of your reign. A king who kept a tight rein on his court was seen as strong. One whose court was rife with factionalism was seen as weak. It's like a medieval reality TV show, but with much higher stakes and actual beheadings instead of just broken friendships. Your relationship with the church, that omnipresent force, was perhaps the most critical aspect of your legacy. Did you defend the faith, embark on crusades, and fund cathedrals? Or did you clash with the Pope, confiscate church lands, and incur excommunication? Your piety, or lack thereof, profoundly influenced how you were perceived. A king blessed by the church had divine legitimacy. One cursed by it faced rebellion and damnation. Mainstream historical fact shows us that kings like Henry II of England faced immense challenges and lasting reputational damage from their conflicts with the church, particularly with figures like Thomas Becket. Justice, or the lack thereof, under your arbitrary authority, also left an indelible mark. Were you known for your fairness, even-handedness, and swift judgment? Or were you seen as cruel, capricious, and prone to favoritism? The tales of your judgments, the punishments you meted out, would echo through the generations. He was a good king, people might say, for he hanged the thieving baker, or he was a tyrant, for he burned the innocent witch. The scales of medieval justice were often tipped by power, not principle, and your legacy was weighed on them. Then there was war and chivalry, the ultimate test of a medieval king. Did you lead your knights bravely into battle, securing victories and expanding your domain? Or were you a coward, prone to retreat, losing lands and lives? The battlefield was where legends were forged or shattered. The romanticized ideals of chivalry often clashed with the brutal realities of warfare, but your image was tied to both. A king who fought well, even if he lost, might be remembered more fondly than one who never fought at all. Your death and succession, the culmination of your reign, often defined your immediate legacy. Was it a peaceful transition or a bloody struggle for the throne? Did your dynasty continue, strong and unbroken, or did it crumble, plunging your realm into civil war? A peaceful succession was a sign of a strong, well-ordered reign. A chaotic one, a mark of failure. The rituals surrounding your death, the mourning, the elaborate funeral, these were not just customs, but performances designed to ensure stability and project continued power, even in absence. Finally, the shadow of superstition. Did you consult astrologers, heed omens, and believe in the power of relics? In a world steeped in magic and prophecy, your choices in these matters could be seen as wisdom or folly. A king who defied a bad omen and succeeded might be seen as brave, one who defied it and failed as arrogant. Your medieval mind, so different from ours, embraced these beliefs as truth, and your historical reputation is colored by them. Was that comet a sign of your greatness or your downfall? Your chroniclers would decide. Your legacy, then, is a patchwork quilt woven from all these peculiar threads. It's not just about the big battles or the grand treaties. It's about the whispers in the court, the smell of your clothes, the way you ate your boar, the look in your eye when you passed judgment, and whether or not you had enough sons. It's about how your very medievalness, so alien to our modern eyes, was both your strength and your vulnerability. You are remembered not just for what you did, but for how you did it, within the utterly unique, often bizarre confines of your royal medieval life. And historians, even today, pick through the scraps of evidence, trying to decide if you were a benevolent ruler or a ruthless tyrant, a wise statesman or a superstitious fool. They still argue whether your perceived madness was a genuine affliction or a convenient political narrative, leaving your true nature perpetually shrouded in the mists of time. You were, after all, a king in a world that ran on different rules, where a crown was not just a symbol, but a heavy, often uncomfortable, and very, very peculiar burden. And so, as the last echoes of your royal life fade into the quiet of the night, we are left with the lingering sense of a world both grand and profoundly strange. A world where destiny was etched in the stars, where a king's bath was an event, and where power was as much about perception as it was about decree. Feel the weight of that crown, not as a burden now, but as a fascinating whisper from the past, a story told across centuries. Let the images of those vast, echoing halls, the flickering torchlight, and the distant sounds of a medieval court gently dissolve. The rich tapestries, the heavy brocades, the scent of wood smoke and beeswax, they soften, becoming fainter, like a dream you almost remember upon waking. There's no need to hold onto the harsh edges of history, only to appreciate its intricate beauty. The long, winding path of your royal journey has come to its peaceful close. All the peculiar habits, the grand pronouncements, the silent fears beneath the ermine cloaks, they all settle now, like dust motes catching the last rays of a setting sun. Rest easy in the knowledge that even in the strangest of lives, there is a quiet dignity, a unique story waiting to be understood.